This. No phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, good morning and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN, Radio Central. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you can join the conversation over the next 3 hours. First of all, happy Mother's Day. But let's take care of some housekeeping. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. That will get you into the studio for two-way talking conversation. Russ is behind the board, behind the glass, flying the board this morning. So he'll take your calls and get you set up. Good morning, Russ. I heard you on with the Dadder Day guys and the background of your mom and stepmoms and so forth. So pass on to your mom, Russ. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much, Joe. I wasn't sure if I was going to have a chance to call her today because she knows I'm here on Sunday mornings, and I did have some little things going on. The wife and I have a couple of errands that we need to run. I know get a few groceries, as she mentioned. I'm going to see if I can try and call my stepmother tonight, to let her know that my wife Robin and I, that we still care. We're glad that she's around, even though that my dad, has passed on. But anyway, happy Mother's Day to all the moms in the listening audience.
All the moms in the listening audience. And many of us wish we could make that one more call and talk to our moms one more time. But let's continue with housekeeping. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. The text line is running. That just simply means you can text the number 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. Just like you text anyone else, it appears on a screen here in the studio in real time, and we try to work it into the conversation then. Hey, if it's 5-6 paragraphs, that's called an email, guys. Either pick up the phone or write an email. Don't forget the station is streaming 24/7 to the TuneIn app, and that means you can take us anywhere. I love that feature, the fact that you can have it on your device and you can get in and out of your car. You can have it in the office. Again, tune in. Just put WCRN in there. You'll see our cool logo. Do me a favor, hit the like button. We know you're there, and then you can find us easy. Now, I do stream the show to the station's Facebook page and YouTube channel, so you're welcome to join me as I broadcast from the Cameo studios, and that does mean the Cameo Cam is on, as well as my social media platforms, Joe Mangi Show. And you can follow me, of course, on my social media, which would be X and Facebook and Instagram at Joe Mangi Show. And I'm also streaming to my Facebook page, my X account, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and I do stream live to Rumble. There's an entire Joe Mangiacotti Show channel on Rumble, and you can watch this show live and all past shows there as well. Don't forget this week's edition of the Weekly Report also dropped on Friday. You can hear the audio here, but you can also go to theweeklyreport.online or ff.org, or I reshare it or repost it on my social media accounts. That takes care of a lot of housekeeping, I think. So if you have any questions, again, 508-871-7000, and Russ will take care of that. It is Mother's Day, right? Look, there's some stuff about when Mother's Day started. Most of us recognize that the second Sunday is it, and that was a presidential proclamation as to why that came about. But today is one of those days that cuts through, right? Politics and headlines and arguments and all the noise. At least we hope it does. And everybody, came from somebody. And for most of us, the first voice we heard, the first hand that held us, the first person who sacrificed for us, corrected us, prayed for us, fed us, and believed in us was Mom. And Mother's Day began not as a Hallmark holiday, not as a brunch reservation, not a flower shop bonanza, but as a sincere effort to honor the sacrifices mothers make. And maybe that is the question today. Have we remembered the meaning, or have we outsourced it to restaurants, right? Roses and greeting cards and maybe the last minute stuff. And depending on how old you are, the child is, how much does dad get involved? But the quick history here is it didn't begin as the greeting card holiday. Its roots are more serious and sentimental. In the modern American holiday is mostly closely, I should say, tied to Anna Jarvis, who wanted a day to honor the sacrifices mothers make to their children after the death of her own mother. And Anne Reeves Jarvis, back in 1905, as Jethro would say in the Beverly Hills, 1905, right? Anne Reeves Jarvis had earlier organized Mother's Day work clubs in West Virginia to improve health and sanitation for families. In the broader 19th century, mothers movement had connections to peace activism after the Civil War. And the first widely recognized Mother's Day observations were held in 1908, including at a church in Grafton, West Virginia. And carnations became associated with the holiday. Now, I always assumed carnations was the flower that you gave mom on Mother's Day because they're fairly inexpensive, right? So when you're a little kid, moms pretend they love them. They're very inexpensive to buy, and that's what it is. But apparently it goes a lot deeper than that because it was carnations at the 1908 event. And then on May 9th, in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation calling on Americans to publicly honor our mothers. And then he fixed Mother's Day as the second Sunday in May. So here's the irony. Anna Jarvis later turned against this holiday. Well, she turned against the commercialization of this holiday. She hated the florists and the candy companies and greeting card companies. And she turned her personal day of gratitude into a retail event. And she wasn't thrilled with that, guys. That wasn't exactly what she was going for. So is Mother's Day the biggest restaurant day of the year? I get to tell you when in some of you listening now may remember the days when I was doing a show called Out with Joe. And Out with Joe was a dining and entertainment review show. And this was always a big topic on the dining show because you had Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. And of course, Easter was up there too. And they were always the question and competing, hey, what's the busiest restaurant day of the year? And I would ask chefs this and restaurant owners, and as the internet expanded and so forth, you can do more research. But the question is, often it is, or at least one of the biggest. According to Open Tables, it says that Mother's Day was the biggest dining day last year in 2025. And right now, dining is up 12%. So for restaurant, Mother's Day is especially powerful because it's not just dinner, it's brunch, lunch, early dinner, sometimes the whole weekend. Right? Valentine's Day, don't you kind of restrict that to dinner, right? You get your Valentine and some chocolates or whatever, and some flowers or whatever it is he or she prefers, and you go to dinner. And that's it. But the Mother's Day can be this day-long thing. And I'm trying to remember the name of the restaurant. Where was your best 508-871-7000 best restaurant for Mother's Day? The one, I forget what they called it, and I know somebody knows what I'm talking about, but at the golf club right on Route 9, almost near the station, across from the station in Westboro, you drive down, there was a country club there and the restaurant stuff there. And I forget the name of it. Wow, I'm drawing a blank on it because I didn't really know where the conversation was going to go here. But they used to do a brunch, and it was so massive and so good, and it was sold out all the time. So where was your favorite Mother's Day restaurant or favorite place to take your mom? So for Mother's Day and for the restaurants, it's really a whole day because you've got the brunch, the lunch, the early dinner, sometimes the whole weekend is all kinds of Mother's Day stuff going on. And then Open Table, according to their data, found that the brunch window from 10 to 4, I would consider it 3, 4 in the afternoon brunch. All right, I take issue with that, but this is what Open Table is saying. I think brunch is a little earlier than that. And it accounted for 53% of Mother's Day bookings is what people will book in the brunch. But that's a big window in the restaurant. 6-hour window is a big window to narrow that down. 53% went to brunch. So food and wine, in other, the Citing Toast, that's also a dining-like track. I think their data reported that full-service restaurants have seen a 51% revenue increase on Mother's Day compared with a normal Sunday. So it's a big day for the restaurant business. And Mother's Day is one day a year where dad and the kids look around the kitchen and say, we're not risking this. Get in the car. We're going to go out. Hopefully the plans were made, far earlier than that. And Mother's Day is also one of the biggest consumer holidays of the year. So it's not just the dining out. The National Retail Federation projects record Mother's Day spending of $38 billion this year. Think about that. With shoppers, according to National Retail Federation, about $284 per person will be spent on Mother's Day. That's impressive. The categories are interesting. Jewelry is around $7.5 billion. Special outings, $6.4 billion. Electronics, $4.4 billion. Electronics. What electronics do you buy for your mother? I assume maybe something like an Alexa would be a big thing for mom. So she can say, turn on the lights when she gets up to maybe use the bathroom at night. Maybe cameras, I don't know. Flowers, $3.2 billion. Greeting cards are down there at $1.3 billion. Again, that's the National Federation, Retail Federation is saying that. And flowers remain central, right, to the day. Carnations, as I said, the original symbolic flower, because Anna Jarvis used them to honor her mother. And by the time the President Wilson made Mother's Day official in 1914, carnations are already strongly associated with the holiday, so it's kind of stuck to that, right? Roses, more the Valentines. There is also a 2026 pocketbook angle. Axios reports that momflation is affecting the holiday, with consumers still spending but looking harder at coupons and fewer gifts and cheap alternatives and higher prices for flowers, brunch, and traditional gifts. That makes you start to think outside of the box sometimes, doesn't it? So happy Mother's Day to all of you. If you'd like to wish your mother a happy Mother's Day, you can do that. Give us a call at 508-871-7000, and we'll give a shout out if you haven't been able to go see mom or get to mom. And what else do we want? Oh, I want to address one of the texts. A text came in. So I remember, I think it was last week, guys, we talked a little bit, well, maybe last Wednesday too. I don't know, hoping. And on that note, remind you that with the slight altering in the programming, right? I am 9 to noon every Sunday now, 9:30. Jerry Doherty joins the program, and we get the more of the economic business look at what's happened in the last week with Jerry Doherty. I'm also will be still on Wednesdays, but a little earlier. I'm going to be on 11 o'clock on Wednesdays, 11 a.m. on Wednesdays instead of 1, because we are now, the station that is, we're going to take Howie Carr at 2 o'clock from 2 to 6, his new hours. And most of our 1 o'clock, so like Frankie Boyer will be on at 1 instead of 2, and some of those changes. You can go to WCRNradio.com. And the lineup is there. The new lineup is there. And don't forget that there's a great feature on our WCRN.com, radio.com site. And that's called the playback link. The playback link will let you go in any show that you like. You can go to that host, either by the host or by the show on the schedule. And you'll see that link. And if you hit that, the very latest show will populate the top of the page. And I'm talking a minute or two. So when I get off the air in a few minutes, you could listen to this whole show. But you could go back to the last show I did, which would have been Wednesday, and you can hear it then. And that goes for all the shows. And you have the option of downloading it as an MP3 file. And then you basically got a podcast of the show. But this show is then posted as a podcast. So don't forget, you can go to Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Joe Mangiacotti Show, wherever you'd like to do that. But the texter sent a message to the text line of the station, said, hey, make sure you get this to Joe. And I think what he's trying to say is he put an article up here about Barack Obama. Post claim Obama was targeted by 11 assassination attempts, and then it goes Yahoo News. So I think what he's trying to say, texture 622, is trying to say, hey, it wasn't Trump. Obama had more. And okay, that can happen. Maybe I'm wrong. But then I researched a little more, and as of today, Donald J. Trump appears to have had the most publicly documented assassination attempts and serious assassination plots of any U.S. president or former president, especially if you count candidate, former president, president-elect, and sitting president, right? Because that's a unique category for Trump. Because he's been candidate Trump, he's been President Trump, and then he's been former president, and then again, candidate and president-elect, and then sitting presidents. So there's a lot of time. And you've got the 4-year gap, right? The intermission of the Trump presidency. The entertainment was not great. It was called Joe Biden. But now that makes a very big chunk of time, because it's going to be 2 4-year terms, a 4-year break. So now we're talking 12. We go to 15. So it's been 11 years that he has been president something. Sitting president, president-elect, candidate. So that's a long time. So it makes sense, especially since it's so controversial. I don't think he's controversial. I think the left is always looking to make him controversial. Think about the Trump derangement syndrome that it takes place. These are people who wake up every morning and they're trying to think. They run right to their phone or their computer to check Truth Social and X and everything else. They see what he said or what's going on, because with this guy, you're going to get posts on Truth at 2, 3 in the morning or 5 in the morning like it was 2 in the afternoon. So this is the other thing that's funny, right? We always hear about the media. I'm not talking about those in the press, the White House press corps that has to keep up with this president. I'm talking about the jamokes out here in mainstream media and some of these cable network news channels who are complaining that what they're complaining is that they have to actually work. They wanted to be journalists, but they wanted to be, chill at the office journalists. They wanted to be journalists that regurgitate stories in what's going on in the cybersphere, right? Blue sky and all that. And the fact that they have to constantly cover different things, and they're not used to presidents basically spinning as many plates as this one does. So they're always complaining about how hard they have to work right now. But he's a very consequential president. So if you look at most documented direct attacks, Gerald Ford's up there too. Historically, Ford was long the clearest answer among sitting presidents, that is, because he had 2 direct assassination attempts in September of 75. And in 17 days apart, right, there was another attempt. Lynette Squeaky Fromme in Sacramento and Sarah J. Moore in San Francisco. 17 days apart. And we saw, you had Butler as candidate. You had the situation at Mar-a-Lago, or the golf course rather, down there, and then somebody trying to get into Mar-a-Lago, last week. So major documented attempts. Donald Trump, right? We got the 2016 Las Vegas officer gun grab attempt, the 2017 North Dakota forklift motorcade plot, the 2020 racing letters, 2024 Butler shooting, 2024 Florida golf course attempt, the 26 White House Correspondents' Dinner that we just all went through. And there are plots and things happening that Homeland Security and FBI intercept all the time that never make it to the news. And a lot of that, by the way, I was watching Kash Patel in an interview. I think it was Hannity. Hannity's doing this new Hannity Hangout thing. And he had Kash Patel on. And I didn't see the whole interview, but there's parts of it where he's talking about some of the terrorist plots that have been thwarted by the FBI. But no headlines, no big discussions about it and what could have been done or anything, because it didn't make the news. Our agents of Homeland Security, our agents of the FBI, we got the cyber division constantly monitoring. And when they see chatter, and sometimes people have asked me, I've asked people in the past, what do they mean, Joe, when they say chatter? Chatter is just how they denote the fact that all of the communications that that our intelligence agencies are monitoring, and that goes from cell phones to regular phones to stuff on the internet, and these video games, these online action video games that people play, they have these communication features. We can chat with players. And that has become this massive communications alternative to terrorists, child traffickers, all of that, because it's not a normal mode. And when you're in there and you've got the line, the protection connection, and you're in there, it's harder, but they are. So our intelligence agencies and Homeland Security are in these chat rooms and games, and they're monitoring that too. So when they see chatter, there's activity on these things. And sometimes it's in code and so forth, but it's chatter. They often can decode it, or they can figure out what they're talking about. And that's when there's a tick up in that usually means there's a planning stage. And if there's a planning stage going on, they need to pay attention to that. And like I said, they may not know exactly what it is, but it starts to get concerning. If the chatter is going up and a lot of activity is flying around with the usual suspects, right? The usual suspects that we kind of monitor that belong to some of these radical groups and so forth, they get very nervous, because they say something is coming up, and that makes them concerned. So text to 266. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's what the text line and emailing the show and stuff is supposed to be, is share stuff. But I'm going to call it Trump, from what I can search, is still number one. But again, that's spanning first term, this so much in our second, he's halfway through the second term, guys, and the 4 years in between. And don't forget, there was a lot of stuff going on while he was president-elect in 2016 until he took office in 2017. So we're going to give it to Donald J. Trump as the president with the most threats and attempts on his life. So that's where we're gonna put it there. All right, let's remind you here that you've got from now till noon, 2.5 more hours. That's fantastic. And you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And Russ will take your call and get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. And the text line again, 617-297-8388. And don't forget, we are streaming. So if you'd like to watch the virtual studio, for whatever reason, you're welcome to do that. I see that viewers are clicking up. And we're going to take our 9:30 break here. When we come back on the other side, Jerry Doherty will join the conversation. You know him from Making Money Last, and he's the president and founder of Boston Independence Group. And we'll talk a little treason, I guess, when he comes back on the other side. And don't forget that the show is actually a podcast after I get off the air. It is turned into a podcast, and then it's posted, and you can subscribe. And if you subscribe, every time a new show is posted, bang, you get a little notification, and off and running we're going. But we're going to take the break here. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Text line 297-8388. When we come back on the other side, Jerry Doherty, and let's see where we go from there, folks. Stick with us. We'll be back on the other side.
Has your child swallowed your medicine, your laundry detergent, your nail polish remover? Call the Poison Helpline. Have you inhaled paint thinner, glue, pesticides? Call the Poison Helpline. Have a question about a dose, a fume, something your kid just drank? Call the Poison Helpline. Poisonings can happen at the home, on the job, or in the great outdoors. Call the Poison Helpline first for fast, free advice from medical professionals. Call 1-800-222-1222 anytime, anywhere. 1-800-222-1222. Save the number, save a life. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
At Discover, we believe anniversaries should be a time of celebration, not obligation. That's why we think annual fees are ridiculous. And now, just for giving us a try, we're going to give new card members a 1-year anniversary gift they'll never forget. At the end of your first year, we'll match all the cash back you've earned dollar for dollar. No caps and no catches, because we know if you try us, you'll like us. And that's worth every penny. Try it and believe it at discover.com/match. Cashback match offer only for new card members. Limitations apply.
Have you mixed your pain meds, your sleep meds, your allergy meds? Call the Poison Helpline. Has your child eaten a tube of toothpaste, a chip of paint, a wild mushroom? Call the Poison Helpline. Have you been bitten by a spider, a snake, an insect? Call the Poison Helpline. Poisonings can happen at the home, on the job, or in the great outdoors. Call the Poison Helpline first for fast, free advice from medical professionals. Call 1-800-222-1222 anytime, anywhere. 1-800-222-1222. Save the number, save a life. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Boston, are you ready for a show that's unique and different? Blind and Beyond Radio Show is the only commercial radio show in the world for the visually impaired and the blind community. We are the bridge between the blind community and the sighted community. This show is sponsored by Carroll Center for the Blind in Newton, Mass. Fun, informative, educational, with trivia prizes every Sunday night. Blind and Beyond Radio Show every Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m. on WCRN, 8:30 a.m.
All right, folks. Welcome back as we continue with the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, reminding you can join the conversation for the remainder of the time at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And, of course, our text line is 617-297-8388. But as we do at this time every week, Jerry Doherty, who is the president and founder of Boston Independence Group in Westboro, and host of Making Money Last right here on WCRN. And he helps families approaching retirement and protect what they've earned, build a reliable income with income strategies, and make smart decisions about taxes and Social Security and long-term care and legacy planning. Also probably recommend a really great restaurant. So as people look at the economy and the markets, inflation, taxes, and uncertainty in Washington, this is exactly the kind of steady, practical guidance folks need. So, Jerry Doherty, welcome back to the Joe Mangiacotti Show. You look marvelous.
Well, good Sunday morning, Joe. Good Sunday morning, Russ. And I want to say happy Mother's Day to all of the moms who are tuning in, Joe. Mother's Day is a wonderful day of the year.
It is. Did you always keep up later when we get, older? There was a period, I think maybe in my 20s, that it went down to a phone call and something. And then I think as I got to my later 20s and 30s, I'm like, what the heck are you doing? Get those flowers sent, drop by, stop by the house. And then it was always by the 30s, it was always All right, to the sisters, the siblings. I have all sisters, no brothers. Let's take mom out. Well, we want to take mom. Yeah, we're taking mom out. And that's where I started to discover where was a great place to take a mom in Metro West at the time. They're packed, right? They're crazy to get into the restaurants.
It's a funny day to go out, Joe. It falls into a lot of those other categories, that things are kind of overpriced and all of that, but it is Mother's Day. So we do have to, do that.
Yeah,
I was fortunate, Joe, when you talk about aging a little bit, because, my mother died quite a while ago now, 10 years ago. But after my father died, she had moved to Florida from Massachusetts, of course. And she spent about the last 20 years of her life in Florida. And my office was in Boston at that time. And of course, I was entrenched in Massachusetts with kids and all of that. But literally, I called my mother pretty much, I'm not exaggerating, and I tell you this, pretty much every single day, from my car on the way into the city. And she appreciated it. So in a way, it was kind of honoring her every single day. I wish I could still call her today.
Which probably is a better idea, folks, right? Make the phone call. And I did the same thing when my mother got older. I tended to get on the phone with her a lot because you were in the
Joe,
car.
if you can hear me, for some reason, I think I lost you.
Oh, really? Going through everything looks good here. So do you hear me, Jerry? Check your stuff. I am running through the board. Russ, we're good, right? Everything's coming through.
Everything is good.
All right. So it's probably just your earpiece or what have you there. But to the listeners, what I was going to say is I found myself doing that, as I got older. I called my dad all the time. And even after he passed, so many times I had to remember, because I'd be in the car and I'd hear something, on a talk show or something. And I'd be like, my first thought is, I wonder if Dad heard that. I got to call him and tell him about that exchange. And it took me that second to remember that's one hell of a phone call, because he's not with us anymore. So I think a lot of us go through that. But I did that. I don't know about every day with my mom. There were times, and she would call a lot of times at the most inconvenient time. And I'd say, Mom, I got to call you back. And I forgot to a lot of times. And then one time my sister told me that my mom had conveyed to her, Joey, yeah, she still called me Joey. It's the only person in the world that was calling me Joey. She'd say, Joey tells me he's going to call me back all the time, but he doesn't. And my sister, Nancy conveyed that to me, Jerry, and my heart sunk. And after that got relayed, which I don't think she didn't tell my sister to tell me, it was a happenstance thing. But after my sister had told me my mother had said that to her, I realized when I say to my mother, I'll call you back, she's waiting. And, you get busy with your day and you go on. And so I always made a point to make sure I called my mother back when I told her I would do that, no matter how busy.
That's very sweet, Joe.
Because it gets to you,
Yeah.
Jerry, let's move on to some of the issues of the world. I don't know if you want to start with the ceasefire situation. I know I do want to talk a little bit about it. Oh my God, Jerry, I got to ask you. And this goes to listeners, folks. Did you all catch AOC on a podcast? And you probably weren't watching the podcast, but you've seen the clip where she insults and just talks about billionaires. And let me set this up just quickly for some of the listeners. And she was on a podcast rant, right? And this just exposes the socialist dangerous ignorance of how wealth is actually created. And so she's not criticizing one billionaire, right? She is not just talking about one company, Jerry. She's saying that the very concept of earning $1 billion is a myth. In AOC's worldview, that's a scary place to be. Once you become too successful, your success is no longer achievement. It becomes evidence of guilt. And that's her words. That's what she claimed. Did you catch this?
I did. I don't know who didn't catch it. It's been all over the news, where AOC said you can't earn $1 billion. She essentially is, vilifying wealth. And what was amazing too, Joe, is that the person who was interviewing, a woman who I haven't seen before, she said, "You're absolutely correct."
Yeah, she's nodding around. Yeah.
Right. So there are people out there who agree with AOC that you can't earn $1 billion. Why she claims that you can't earn $1 billion is that AOC lives in a world where she limits her thinking. Right?
I actually have the audio clip, Jerry. Let's play that,
Yeah.
and then we can talk about it. Let me get that queued up, and we'll do that.
They have, when you have these systems, when you have corporations, when you have an economic elite, they have not, there's a certain level of wealth and accumulation that is unearned, right? You can't earn $1 billion. You just can't earn that.
That's exactly correct.
You can get market power, you can break rules, you can do all sorts of things. You can abuse labor laws,
Yep.
you can pay people less than what they're worth,
Yep.
but you can't earn that, right?
That's
And
right.
so you have to create a myth that since you didn't earn that, you have to create a myth of earning it. And so if you're making minimum wage at a Walmart and you're making $7 an hour, and I mean, Dan, with these gas prices, it takes you $7 to get to work.
That's right.
And so as a result, we've kind of internalized this moralized system, right? The people at the top are smarter, better, more sophisticated. And therefore, the people at the bottom are uneducated, lazy, etc.
I got to tell you, in her world, in her mind, seems like she can't understand. No, you probably can earn I mean, what are you going to get paid? $499,000 an hour to become a billionaire by hourly wage. So she doesn't understand the concept of entrepreneurship and the concept of building something. She believes if one person becomes wealthy, someone else must have to be exploited, right? It has to be. And if you look at these companies, folks, and SpaceX and Facebook and all the average salaries are very healthy 6-figure incomes, right? From, 100 and something to Facebook with like a $360,000 medium type of income in there. But free market wealth, it's not created that way by the hour. Jeff Bezos, he did not become wealthy by taking $1 billion out of vault labeled workers. Elon Musk did not become wealthy by passing a law naming himself rich. Steve Jobs did not build Apple with redistributing existing wealth. They became wealthy because they built companies that created value at a scale. That is the key phrase, value at a scale. But she's saying that if you become a billionaire, you have to be dirty. You had to have children in the mines or building the phones. And actually, in that case, there's some merit to it. But the point is, I think she just showed her complete ignorance of how economics works and certainly how businesses work.
Right. And it's just another area that she's exposed to her ignorance. I love the little minion that she has interviewing her, who goes along kind of the nodding head, like that little, bobble thing that we say. It's a complete ignorance of, understanding capitalism, that, these people became billionaires because what they did is they created a tremendous amount of wealth for other people. When you look at Jeff Bezos, the amount of wealth that he has created for other people is absolutely amazing. So it's in direct proportion to the, benefit that he has brought to others that he himself has profited. It really comes down to, Joe, it's very basic, Adam Smith type of stuff, that there's an invisible hand, that if you pursue your own goals, which Jeff Bezos did, and let's not forget that, Amazon started as a book company. That's what Amazon started as originally, and then turned into this big distribution system, and now has gone on to, Amazon Web Services and so on. It's evolved over time. He keeps on rolling with the punches. But go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say, Steve Forbes was asked about this on Fox Business, and he had a response. I was going to play that because it fits in. So he's set up by the panel talking about this, playing a similar clip that I just did, what AOC said, and Steve Forbes responded.
All they want to do is get power.
And the way they do it is by trying to stir up hate, envy, and division. They know they can't win on most issues, so they try to stir up people's jealousy and envy and things like that. And so this old trope that behind every fortune is a crime has the goal of discrediting the people who create great enterprises, discrediting the private markets, the free markets, and so they can get control. That's all about control. And so they can't do it in the honest way. They do it by tearing people down rather than enabling people to build.
So his response to it is this is just this trope, this, you gotta attack the billionaires, and they're just evil if you become wealthy. Jerry, is it as simple as, if you want to, make it good in this world, build a better mousetrap? And if you do that, then you get success. And the thing about when wealthy people criticize or make these comments, I tend to ask them, yeah, but you know what? You weren't there when they worked 16 hours a day, and you weren't there when they were living off ramen noodles, and when they had to drive without car insurance and try not to get caught because they couldn't afford it. And they sacrificed and they worked their butts off. Elon Musk used to sleep under his desk, right, at Tesla, because Tesla was about to go bankrupt. It was going under, and he had to save the company. So you weren't there when that all happened. So all that sweat and the equity they put into it and the sacrifices people made, then they reap the rewards, but somehow they're evil for becoming rich.
Well, Joe, I think you bring up a very good point. I think it was Napoleon Hill, I believe, who says, that anything, it's a totally different philosophy than AOC, by the way, Napoleon Hill. He says anything is achievable. He said, you just have to ask yourself two questions. What's the price you're willing to pay? How badly do you want it? And what's the price you're willing to pay?
Yeah.
And if you want something badly enough, you'll pay virtually any price. And Elon Musk and countless others, whether it was Thomas Edison, before Elon Musk, countless others worked like dogs. If you look at, if you read a biography of Henry Ford, you see that Henry Ford worked literally like 20 hours a day, was sleeping in 4-hour spans, all of this. And he did all of that. But look what he achieved from it, inventing the assembly line, essentially. And, has revolutionized the car industry.
And
so all these people.
I was just going to say, you can also thank Henry Ford, Jerry, for the weekend, because Henry Ford is the one who said, hey, you know what? Because he felt that the workers needed to have a balance with life and God. And he said, we're only going to work Monday through Friday because Saturday needs to be a day that my workers can relax and rest and do a family thing, and Sunday, their worship day. So he turned, and back in his day, in the 1800s, you would work 6 days, was a work week, because you had Sunday off for church. And Henry Ford also gave us the 8-hour work shift. And he did that because he wanted the assembly line in his factories to work 24 hours a day. And the easiest way to do that is 3 8-hour shifts. So that's where the overnight shift, the night shift, the overnight or lobster shift, I don't know why people call it the lobster shift, but it's 3 8-hour shifts. So our workday, Henry Ford, you can thank him for the 8-hour workday and for your weekends. And I know some people want to think that came because liberals and progressives, whatever, did pickets and said we need Saturday and Sunday off. It wasn't even a concept.
So Joe, it's another example of Adam Smith being so correct, right? The reason that Henry Ford did that is because he wanted the factories to run 24/7. That's what he did. Well, 24/6, let's say. He wanted the factories to run. And so what he did is he created 3 8-hour shifts. So everybody came in different shifts, but Henry Ford achieved his goal of the factory. Then he started paying people more money. And one of the reasons he started paying people more money, Henry Ford, is that it occurred to him that by paying people more money, they could afford these new Model Ts that were coming out. And Ford employees, drove Model Ts, and you started to create a middle class. So it is the very Adam Smith thing about pursue your own goals. And because of that, there will be a societal benefit to all of this. For example, I use in my radio program when I talk about this topic, very different than AOC. She should go back to Boston University and take a few economics courses, basic economics courses, her alma mater. When you look at this, if you go out there and pursue your goals, if you want to become the wealthiest person in the world, all you need to do is develop a pill that will cure any cancer, right? Develop a pill that will regrow somebody's hair, right? And you will become the wealthiest person. But by doing that, a whole bunch of people will benefit. You'll have people who won't be dying of cancer. So of course, it's he or she who brings in the most value that walks away with the most money. When you look at people like Jeff Bezos, when you look at people like Elon Musk and countless others of these, this new crop of billionaires, the reason that they are so rich is because they brought the most value to all of us. And then what I also find interesting in a system of capitalism that AOC tends to forget is that it is typically yesterday's poor. When you look at people like Jeff Bezos, especially, it's yesterday's poor that in our system, it's the only system in the history of mankind that has the ability to make yesterday's poor tomorrow's very rich. In 1 or 2 generations, people can build fabulous wealth very, very quickly, very quickly.
Well, I recently, we went to Vermont and just for a getaway and love Vermont, not their politics, but much like California, it's a beautiful state. I love the mountains and the lakes and so forth. And we went to Manchester, Vermont, and up in that area is Hilldale, which is the home that Lincoln's son, Robert Lincoln, built. And he built it as a summer home. But what's interesting is on the property, and anybody that's been there, it's a beautiful home. And when he was a lawyer, he was an ambassador, he was a lot of things, Secretary of War, a lot of things that I didn't even realize when I got there. And you tell you a little bit of the history. And he ended his career as president of Pullman, the Pullman car company, and they made the train cars and stuff. And so they have a Pullman car there, but also on the property, Jerry, they have a brick foundation, and it's the outline of the size of the cabin that President Lincoln was born in. So you can stand on the property, and he happens to have, you go up a little hill there, and he has his own observatory too, big telescope, but that's another part. But you can see one generation. You see this like 14 by 12 or whatever it is that President Lincoln was born in. And then right there is this beautiful summer home that any one of us would love to live in one generation. All right, born in this little tiny cabin with nothing, no plumbing, dirt floor, the whole bit, to this beautiful summer home on 300 acres in the middle of Vermont. And that all happened. That's the son of the guy born in the cabin was able to do. And
Right,
that
amazing,
can be
Joe.
done
So when you
here
go to
in
these
America.
college campuses today, everybody knows who Che Guevara was.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that he was a great freedom fighter and all this stuff like that. This revisionist history, a murdering thug. Yet, if you ask them who Horatio Alger was, or whether they've ever read any Horatio Alger stories, they'll tell you no. And all of these stories that you're talking about, Joe, only happen, these Horatio Alger type stories, in the system of capitalism that's done more to improve the condition of mankind than any other system in the history of mankind is capitalism. Pursuing your own interests, Adam Smith was so true, pursuing your own interests, right? You will not buy an automobile, Joe, unless you think it's a good deal for you.
Mhm.
The automobile dealership will not sell that car to you unless they operate in their own interest and they think it's a profitable transaction for them. So two people willingly go into a relationship, it's uncoerced, right? Into a relationship. And thereby, when you agree on that price that you both think is a good deal for you, you're both pursuing your own interest, everybody benefits. Who benefits? All the people who make the automobiles. The gas stations benefit, the mechanics benefit, the people who built the car dealership are going to benefit. All of society benefits from that. It was Adam Smith in the 1700s who foresaw this. And it was the forefathers of the United States of America who took these basic principles and put them into place here in the United States. And look what's happened in 250 years. 250 years, a blip in the history of the world.
Exactly. And to your point on this, because the car companies, and back in the 60s, it was post World War II, big, you had factories that turned into B-52 factories and all that for the war effort. War is over, and cars are now being made, but they would run, and this came out of Mad Men, right? The marketing people would have billboards back then with the picture of, say, the latest Chevy. And the caption or line on the billboard would be, buy a car and keep America employed. And it was that principle, because you buy this car. By the way, the Model T came out for $495. And that was a lot of money in that day, but that was the most affordable. That would be like us getting a Ford Escort back in the day. But that was the principle, because you buy this car, there are all of this ripple effect, right, running through the factory people who put it together, the administration office, the marketing office, then the car dealerships, and then you got the infrastructure of the gasolines. And on that, I just wanted to add, because she said in that interview, in that podcast, we have heard this. She's echoing what we heard in the Obama administration. If you remember, in some debate or something, and Elizabeth Warren did this, when they said, you didn't build those roads. You didn't build this. In other words, you got to thank the government for everything. Two things I have a problem with that is, A, we are the government, not you. Second is, actually, no, the government didn't. If you go back until we got the interstate highway bill after World War II, because we realized we had to move tanks and so forth, it was the merchants who said, we got to build roads between our factories in our towns so that people can get to us, and they can open the store. We can open stores and people can get to us. So it was actually businesses, through things like Chamber of Commerce and all that got roads built, and eventually, the communities would maintain them through our taxes. So again, we built the roads, we maintain the roads from the money we make. And when somebody in government makes a statement like that, it just shows they don't understand their role in this.
They don't. And, AOC, she is exposed to her ignorance in virtually every area. I mean, she lives in a very unusual district, Joe. On previous programs, with Peter Blue, we've kind of gone through AOC's district, and it's a unique situation that AOC is in. If it weren't for that district, I don't think AOC would be able to get elected in many other areas in the United States. And now, with this recent Supreme Court decision, we'll see what happens to a lot of these districts. But her ignorance about basic things that work well, commonsensical things that work well, is absolutely astounding. I'd also encourage people to go back and look at that interview I think it was at the Munich Security Conference, or maybe at Davos. I think it was at the Munich Security Conference recently, when they asked her, would the U.S. commit troops to Taiwan? That was an absolute, unmitigated end of a political.
Well, that is that's a talk. I mean, where you are, where you're going. Don't you think you would have asked your staff, could you brief me on Taiwan? What's my answer?
Well, you're going into this big forum, that you're going to be asked these questions very publicly. You think it'd be up to speed a little bit. And by the way, even Joe, without a briefing, a sitting United States congressperson should have a basic handle on all of these issues about what's going to happen in Taiwan, what's going on right now in Iran, basic issues about the economy and so on. Look, we just got, Joe, I know I only have a couple of minutes left. I have to leave early because it's Mother's Day today, but we just got a jobs report, on Friday that is absolutely outstanding. They were anticipating about 60,000 jobs being created. Under the Trump administration, they created 115,000 jobs. And these are private sector jobs. These aren't public sector jobs. Remember, Donald Trump, since he has been president, has now eliminated 350,000 roughly federal jobs, government jobs. It's amazing. So these jobs in the private sector are real jobs, unlike under the Biden administration, where the private sector jobs we saw created let's be honest about this, what they were, and the statistics show this. It was a whole bunch of people who were here illegally who were given Social Security cards, Social Security numbers. That was the job creation. Under Biden, the number of American-born people for job creation declined. The number of foreign-born people in the country, primarily illegally, skyrocketed. Now we're seeing just the opposite. You know, with the border policies that President Trump has had and the deportations, all these hires are actually Americans. 115,000 in 1 month, Joe.
Yeah. Jerry,
It's
no,
tremendous.
we got a break soon. Do you have
Yeah.
any of your college seminars coming up that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of 2 of them right now, but I have 1 more before the halfway break in 2026.
Okay.
Hard to believe. I'll be doing one at Dean College in June. You can simply go to my website, which is bostonindependencegroup.com, bostonindependencegroup.com. Click on the events tab, and you'll see the upcoming events that I have building up.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll be back on the other side. Happy Mother's Day, Jerry.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to WCRN Worcester.
Fox News, I'm Angelo Bavaro. A British cargo ship has been attacked off the coast of Qatar.
The incident highlights the latest in a series of events in the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz that show Iran is testing the fragile ceasefire. While the region waits to see how Iran will respond to the latest U.S. proposal to end the war.
Fox's Trey Yingst. Passengers are deboarding the hantavirus-stricken cruise ship after it arrived in Spain's Canary Islands.
The World Health Organization is reassuring people on the island that there's no risk to the public, and Spanish health officials say the passengers all remain asymptomatic. While none of the current passengers have tested positive for the hantavirus, the outbreak did earlier kill 3 people on board, while several others tested positive. 17 Americans on the ship will now be flown to Nebraska, where they will be monitored by a CDC team.
Fox's Chenley Painter. America is listening to Fox News.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Hey, good morning. You're heading to the airport, right?
Yep, thanks for checking. I like the car. How long have you been a rideshare driver?
About 3 years now. I really enjoy it.
Isn't it hard to make money these days with the price of gas being so high?
Not for me. I use Upside, the free app that gives you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get real money back when you get gas with the Upside app?
Yep, I get real cash back every time I get gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make around $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the Upside app now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code TAXI for an extra 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank account, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code TAXI for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code TAXI.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the 10 o'clock hour here on the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. Don't forget, you can join the conversation for the next couple of hours at 508-871-7000. And our text line, of course, is running at 617-297-8388 617-297-8388. Jerry Doherty from Making Money Last, and of course, Boston Independence Group. He joins us every Sunday at 9:30 to 10. He usually stays a little longer, but it is Mother's Day, and he has several daughters who are all moms and all of that. So a lot of us are doing that. I just wanted this AOC thing, and it was just incredible because we talked about this when this happened, but don't forget that whole Amazon thing with her. She was a fairly new member of Congress, right? And Amazon employs over 1 million people worldwide. They've changed logistics. They've created massive cloud computing infrastructure, AWS. Right. Yeah. And you may have seen AWS and not realize that that's Amazon Web Services. Just about every major company, internet traffic goes through AWS. So Jeff Bezos, sure, they have the store, right? And we all love Amazon. It's so easy and convenient and all of that. But a lot of his money is actually on the AWS stuff and other ventures. He owns a relatively small amount of stock, of ownership of Amazon anymore. That's just the way the things work. But remember the story, right? This is that story where she just messed it up because Amazon had planned to bring 25,000 high-paying jobs to Long Island. That's Queens area. And this progressive activist, and that's what she was really known as at the time, that's how she got elected, chairing or bringing the political pressure, and it killed the deal. Because again, she doesn't understand how this works. She wanted them out of there, not understanding that if you give them a hard time and you give them bad PR and stuff, they just move it somewhere else. It's no skin off of Amazon's nose. But she killed 25,000 jobs for what would have been her constituents in her district, and they were good jobs. So did she actually defeat them? Jobs, investment, tax revenue. I'm sure she did not even enter the calculus in that head of hers about the tax revenue that was going to be pumped in to the district she represents, then the opportunity and the economic growth. And if you had 25,000 people working at this Amazon hub, what does that do for the coffee shops and the restaurants and the mom and pop stores? And the gas stations will do well. The convenience stores will do well. Do you understand the ripple? Economists, and it's changed over the years, but we used to go by the 7 factor in the economy, right? That every dollar ripples 7 times through the economy. But it's even probably more than that. So the problem with anti-business politics is punishes the very working people that she claims she represents. Yeah, she was fairly new as a congressperson and all that. But where were her colleagues? Where was anybody with a functioning IQ that said, hey, AOC, this is actually a good thing? When you're an elected official, whether it's the state legislature, the federal, going off to Congress, or a mayor, or a selectman, or a council person, and a company wants to bring in 25,000 jobs to your district, you manage it the best you can. And these companies, including Amazon, and I've been part of situations where conversations have happened in municipalities, and let's point to Rentham, right? North Attleboro area. Attleboro didn't want the Emerald Square Mall. I know it's a ghost town now. That's another conversation. But the point is, when they were coming in, they made deals, right? Sometimes they buy new fire trucks for the fire department. In Millbury, right? When they built I don't even know what they call that shopping center, guys, the one off of 146. But how many police, how big did the police department come? You go there, especially Christmas time. Those officers, some of them are just hired for the Christmas season, are making really good money. So a lot of times when these big companies want to put a hub or a factory or something in a town, in addition to the tax situation that you're going to get this big influx, but sometimes you need it because it's going to be offset. You need more police, you need more fire and equipment, right? More fire trucks, more ambulances. And then you got to take into consideration, what about people who will move into that district because of the good jobs? Now you're going to put pressure on the school system. The sanitation department, that's called city planning. And that's what you negotiate. You don't kill the deal or chase them off. You negotiate the best possible circumstances of coming into that community. And maybe you can get a couple new cruisers or new fire truck or commitment for certain training and or equipment that you're going to need because you will change our town. That's typically how that's done, folks, usually. But again, she didn't know it then. I don't know if she understands that now. I don't know if anyone's taken the time to explain to her that she has no clue what she's doing there. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. You can join the conversation. Russ will be glad to take your call. Let's go to Ken in New Hampshire. Hey, Ken, thanks for holding on. Happy Mother's Day. What say you?
Good morning, Joe, and happy Mother's Day to all of those who have left us, those our age and older who have very fond memories of our moms and will always for the rest of our lives. To those who are mothers now, to those who are expecting their first soon, like my boss, and to those who will be mothers in the future. Why, I have 3 granddaughters and a grandson, and it's my mission to see the great-grandchildren. So isn't life wonderful?
Godspeed. Absolutely, Ken. How many daughters do you have?
I have 1 daughter.
1 daughter and 3 grandchildren.
I have 4 grandchildren.
4
3
grandchildren. So your sons have some kids too.
Yeah, my one son has 2 daughters, and my daughter has a son and a daughter. So.
Fantastic. All right. So grandpa, well, what do they do? What's the term? Are you grandpa? Grandpa? What's your handle?
I took my grandfather's nickname, Gramps.
Gramps.
And so my wife is Graham.
Got it.
I think distinct. You know what I love is when you have 4 grandparents and they all have different nicknames. I happen to have 2 grandmothers that were both called Nana, and I was kind of awkward. It's like Nana this last name, Nana the other last name. I kind of wish they had chosen different names. And when I talk with grandparents, I ask, "You got different names?" God, I love that.
Yeah, I find it interesting too when I meet a family that I don't know, or maybe I meet a friend's extended family, in the different terms that they come up. Nona, Nana, Grammy. Yeah. I mean, what do they take, right? And sometimes, like I have a friend who's much older now, but he didn't think he was old enough to be called, grandpa or anything. So he used a nickname that his granddaughter couldn't pronounce it. So whatever the butcher name, like he said, you call me that, because you got some people and some women who don't want to be called granny when they're 54 or something like that.
I love this story. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law were having their daughter christened when she was a few months old, whatever. So I had a daughter and a son that was very newborn at that point. And so we're at the christening, and all of a sudden, my father-in-law walks in, and my daughter yells out, "Pa!" That's it. That was his nickname from that point forward.
Yeah.
It makes a great first story.
What's on top of mind today, Mr. Ken?
I was going to start with what you started with. These people who don't like Mother's Day. Get a life. They must be miserable. And they're almost always left. That's too bad.
I wish my mom was still around for one more Mother's Day. I would love that, She I remember the last Mother's Day with her because she had a 11-month battle with pancreatic cancer. So the diagnosis came, and Mother's Day was shortly after that. And it was one of those situations, Ken, where the doctor's saying 2-3 months, but she went 11 months. And I think a lot of it had to do with the mindset. And it was the tumor had grown around an artery and so forth. The short of it is, the doctor, because I don't think my mother always did, right? She had that ability of, the Irish are, where how they don't talk about things, and she just didn't hear the bad things. Or she heard them, but it got tucked away. But the doctor told my older sister and I that it's inoperable, and that's it. But my mother had it in her head. They were going to shrink it, operate, and that's it. We were trying to tell her my parents had a place in Ladies Bridge in Cork in Ireland. We said, go to Ireland, even if it's the last days. No, I got to stay here. We're going to have the surgery. We're going to fix this. And she thinks it's going to be taken out. And I think that positive attitude took a 2 or 3 month prognosis and put it to almost a year. But that year spent a lot of time doing things, right? Whatever you want to do. She wouldn't travel outside the country, but, would get the driven, limo van, take us to New York for the day and some shows and shopping, and then go up the coast of Vermont into Maine and that kind of thing, and try to make it the best that we could. But I would love to have one more Mother's Day. But when it's the last one, and I don't know if you had that situation, Ken, but it's the last Mother's Day, and it's the last, it's like all the last things. And when we celebrated Mother's Day and we celebrated her birthday, I knew they were the last ones while they were happening. And a lot of people, don't.
In my case, my mother passed 6 years ago, May 1st. So I can't say the year prior I had certainty, but I knew when the new calendar year arrived in 2020 that this is going to be the last year. And COVID accelerated that a little bit, that's all. And you tell the story of your mother with pancreatic cancer. I lost a brother, and I'm going to guess around the same time. Anybody have imagined, we've both been through it. Can either of us have imagined that the day would come where there's a better than 50-50 chance of surviving it when you get that diagnosis? Today.
Yeah. When my mother passed, that diagnosis was a death sentence. It was not a matter of we can fight it, we can fix it. It's how do we manage it? How comfortable do you want to be?
Exactly.
But yeah. And that's fantastic. I mean, I kind of heard that, but I honestly haven't read any articles on that. But it's pretty much gotten to the point because, look, we have a person here at the station whose sister was recently diagnosed with this, older woman, and yet she went in the hospital and she's come home and it's looking good for her. And of course, me, because I'm still stuck in sitting in that room when the doctor came in and was explaining the next course of action. And yet, that was a weird day, Ken, because the doctor no one ever said to my mother, well, we know what's wrong. You have pancreatic cancer. Nobody said those words. She, had these issues in her color, how the color goes and yellow and all that. And so we went in and they just start talking about next steps. And one of the doctors leaves. I look at my mother and I said, what do you think he said? And she said, you know what he's saying? I said, I think I do, but nobody said it. She goes, no, they haven't said it. But I was with her when we realized what was going on. And she took it very well at that point, I got to tell you. But they never actually said the words. But at that point, I'm coming from, and this was obviously years ago, but almost close to 20 years ago now. But at that point, it was very much a death. I mean, that there was no cure. Yeah. It was just managing. But now, depending when they catch it, right? Like everything, all cancers are. If you catch it early enough, it's so much more manageable, and mortality rates are far different.
But you know what? You had special health doctors, nurses, and the like at that time. As you're telling that story, they evaluated your mom. They knew what was best for her, and they're treating it like that. Probably gave her the extra 8 months that she so desired. So consider that they were precious.
Yeah.
And you got the advantage of those steps they took on early. They gave her that opportunity because the will maximized the time.
And thank God my mother was just a very stubborn woman when it came to what she wanted. So she just refused to accept that it was a death sentence. And like I said, she operated under the absolute belief, going to shrink it, they'll take it out, and I'm good. And that's fine. And I said to my sister, you're going to tell her? And she goes, I'm telling. Well, I'm not telling her. I'm not having that conversation with my mom. Mom, no, you don't understand. There is no surviving. This is it. We're on countdown. No. What son or daughter wants that conversation with their parents?
But
Man.
Joe, you realize what example your mother set. She set it for your sisters. She had the will that I'm going to survive this. You know why? Because maybe the technology didn't exist then, but it does now. And if anything even comparable happens to your sisters, how do you think they'll view it?
Yeah.
They'll know what their mother would have wanted, and what they'll have seen the example that she set. And worst case scenario, if they were to get the same diagnosis, I'm almost certain they'd survive.
Yeah. Not to be morbid here, he watching this hantavirus. We had the boat. Have you watched what's going on? A few people died on this ocean liner. Or I don't know if it's actually an ocean liner, but we're tracking this story. Global health crowd is buzzing, and the rest of us are asking the right question. You know, what is this? A Dutch expedition cruise ship, Hondias, has been the center of the hantavirus, the outbreak in South Atlantic. The ship left Argentina on the 1st with about 175 passengers and crew. And now passengers started, early in May, they started getting violently ill. 3 people are now dead. 8 total cases confirmed or suspected, 6 lab positive for the Andes strain of hantavirus. And the vessel was quarantined off Cape Verde. 2 critically ill crew members evacuated, and the ship has finally reached its port in Spain's Canary Islands for controlled disembarkment under heavy medical oversight. So there was, in the last few days, have you been kind of watching the panic going through? And of course, the question is this another pandemic? Is this another COVID type thing that's going to happen? But it looks like it won't, because who's the Fox doctor guy? You know what I'm talking about.
I can tell you, I don't watch it that much.
He's a practice, but he said, look, this goes from rats to humans. It's not a human.
New York City.
I'm sorry?
The older guy from New York City.
Yeah, he has a practice. ER. And I can't.
I know he's talking about. I can picture him.
Yeah. Somebody will text it, 617-297-8388. But I watched him on a clip or an interview, live, because they went to him, and he said, look, this is not that. Don't get panicked. This particular virus it will jump from a rat to a human, but it's not a virus that can then go human to human. So you have to get it directly from the rat. It's not contagious that way. So that's good, right? Because I think after what we went through in 2020 and 21 and so forth, anything like this kind of gets us a little heebie-jeebies.
Well, yeah, that's all natural. I have spent very little time studying this, because I think I got information pretty quick that, this isn't new. This has been around for a long time. And on average, there's single-digit number of people who die annually.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not new.
Yeah.
It's less than 10 worldwide, and it's, as you described, you have to consume something from a rat.
Hantavirus, it's a rodent. It's a rodent-borne virus. You get it from breathing in dust contaminated with mouse or rat urine, drop-ins, or saliva.
Yeah.
It's not like COVID. It does not spread easily through casual contact. The Andes strain on the ship is the rare exception that can have limited person-to-person transmission in very close quarters, which you are on a ship usually. And the symptoms start like a flu, fever, muscle aches, nausea, then can crash into severe lung failure. Once it hits the lungs, the fatality rate is brutal, around 38% in the cluster so far. So, but again, I think for most of us who live in fairly sanitary conditions without a lot of mice and rats running around our houses or our kitchens, we're probably safe.
Exactly. And it's really a shame that the media just doesn't tell the story inside of 2 minutes and say, let's move on. Because it's going to impact a very, very small And
Yeah.
it probably is. This cruise ship is the only one that's
That's
going
it.
to.
It's a tragic but isolated
this year.
outbreak on the ship.
It was
It doesn't
awful that
equal
it
global emergency, folks. It's a public health risk rated low by the CDC and the HWO. And you know the HWO would seize on any opportunity to flex their power and expand their power. You know that.
Yeah, it's just a power grab, just like other stories you, Jerry, were talking about. And, you know, the good news is all of the great redistricting information that's come out in the last 2 weeks.
Going to get into that. We will get into that. This is good. I mean, it's just the Democrats are like, oh, man, what happened? You know?
I'll tell you what happened, Joe. They have
I
been
know what
fighting the fight, which is fair. You know, they fought the fight. It's fair for them. These are our laws. They maximize the laws to their advantage. And we had a loser party. Hey, folks, any of you that have been Republicans most of your life, you're on a loser party. Not anymore.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump showed up, you know, Ronald Reagan in many ways was a winner, and he fought for the party. But Donald Trump, he really fights.
Yeah.
And he saw the opportunity a year ago and said, hey, why aren't we fighting? And that's the spirit
You
we
just
have.
summed up Ken, you summed up right there, right? That the whole Trump presidency and Trump movement is, hey, why don't we play the same way the Democrats play? For a long time, we've watched the Romneys, right? And John Kane and all these who just take it and never hit back, never stand up, never fight. And that is, you know, in addition to many other things, why they hate Trump, and also how they don't know how to handle Trump, because it used to be just they can do whatever it is. Oh, thank you, Texter 235. It's Dr. Mark Siegel.
Yep, that's the one.
And now that you sent that text, of course, like, how did you forget that, Joe? Dr. Mark Siegel. Yeah, thank you very much. But the point is, that sums up Trump all over. And you know, you remember, you know, you get in this billionaire New York real estate developer, and the guy is used to getting, you know, targeted and attacked on all kinds of levels. And he's looking at this and saying, why doesn't this party play by the same rules? It's like the Democrats have bent and sometimes broken the rules, and the Republicans, you just kind of roll over and you don't do it. But I think that, Ken, that had a lot to do with the fact that the media is, I don't get to get into case by case, but everybody, the media is extremely slanted to the left, to the Democrats. You just have to go through, like the guy did, you know, when he examined his, you know, NPR, in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, and you go through the reporters, and you go through the editors, and you go through the, you know, producers of the shows. You know, they're all Democrats. You got 3-4%, sometimes maybe 7 or 8% might be Republicans. So of course the news. So, you know, I think the Democrats can have had the media got their back for so long. They were like, don't worry, we're not going to give you tough questions. We're going to do great stories for you. We're going to hit the Republican candidate with really tough questions. We're going to do exposés on them. We're going to do all these things. And then you get, once in a great while, have you noticed anytime a Democrat goes on an interview and they get pushback, they have no idea that Katie Porter couldn't believe that the reporter had the audacity to have a follow-up question. And it's just crazy when they get the follow-up question, because they're not supposed to get a hard time. This is supposed to be, you just supposed to make me look good, man.
Joe, California's going to turn into a great story. I have to mention the biggest story of the week that's being buried. Indiana primaries.
Yeah.
That's huge for Republicans.
Did that seat in question, how did the last time I looked at that story, there was still a seat being counted? It was too close to call?
They've already turned, and possibly a 6th. 5. Got the message. You want to be a rhino? You're out. You're out.
Yeah.
See ya. And this is the kicker. The media was bragging about that the Trump backers were going to lose just a day or two before the election. And then they won big,
Well,
most of them by 60%.
That just proves my point, right? Ken, that reinforces what I just said about the media, that they don't report or give stories based on what's in front of them and the facts. They tell you what they want it to be. We saw that with Hillary Clinton, all right up through election night. In the first hour or two after polls, Hillary's going to win. Hillary's going to win. In the montage of reporters and people watching Trump win in 2016 is probably one of the best montages of my life, as you see them realize what's happening because they believe their own lie. Ken, we're against the clock. Real quick, final thought.
Never have so many jaws dropped as the story you just told.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Happy Mother's Day. Enjoy the day, folks. All right, we're going to take our half hour break in the 10 o'clock hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. It's 508-871-7000. Text line 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. Hey, come on. We're streaming on Facebook, X, Rumble, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile. Back on the other side, folks.
Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Fluorescent lamps. Thermometers. Thermostats. These could all contain mercury, so let's dispose of them properly. Don't put mercury in the trash. Don't put mercury in the trash. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly. Mercury is harmful to human health and the environment. To learn what products in your home may contain mercury and where to safely dispose of them, please contact your local Board of Health or Department of Public Works or visit keepmercuryfromrising.org. Know your products with mercury, so you can dispose of them properly.
Visit keepmercuryfromrising.org, because together we can keep our environment safe. Brought to you by Win Waste Innovations. Performance for the planet.
Bad decisions limit future options. Make enough bad decisions and you can destroy your life. Join Rick Hughes for The Float Line, now heard at its new time, Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. on WCRN, 8:30 a.m. The Float Line describes a main line of resistance in your soul, built on God's Word. Every Sunday, Rick Hughes brings you 30 minutes of inspiration, motivation, and education, all without manipulation. That's The Float Line with Rick Hughes, now Sundays at 8:30 a.m. here on WCRN, 8:30 a.m.
WCRN, where the left and the right meet in the middle. Whether you lean left, lean right, or just want to stay informed, WCRN has you covered with diverse voices, lively debates, and thought-provoking discussions. You'll hear it all right here. Radio Central.
Paul Harvey captivated us with his unique blend of wit, curiosity, and that unforgettable sign-off. WCRN Radio is proud to reintroduce Paul Harvey and the rest of the story. Weekday mornings at 9, only on WCRN.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the 10 o'clock hour on the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. I did want to talk about this because Ken made the reference to it, and it's based on here, this whole gerrymandering and race-based gerrymandering, because we've had this just recently. Both SCOTUS and then Virginia Supreme Court decisions end the race-based gerrymandering games. And so the Democrats' power grab in Virginia is collapsing, handing Republicans a major midterm edge here. So in a 1-2 punch, if you haven't followed this story, right, it has the Democrats reeling a little bit here. 2 major court rulings this spring slam the door on using again race as the primary tool to rig congressional district lines for partisan advantage. I still say, and prove me wrong here, because if you are basing or your thought is that if we make a black district, meaning that the majority of the people, if we draw the lines, so most of the people who are living here happen to be black, that's an automatic Democratic vote. But that's how they think. But the first thing that came was the U.S. Supreme Court's April 29th decision, and that was the Louisiana case, which struck down a map that created a second black majority district. The 6-3 ruling made clear race cannot be the predominant factor in drawing districts. You got to take that out of it. It can't be part of the process, not the calculus there. States cannot use or engage in racial gerrymandering, even under the Voting Rights Act, right? The VRA. Yeah, that's not what the VRA said. To manufacture majority-minority seats that pack Democratic voters into fewer districts or crack Republican ones to dilute their strength. It was Alito, Justice Samuel Alito's majority opinion effectively gutted the aggressive VRA Section 2 claims that had long let, that's what they hung their hat on, Democrats, right, in activist groups, force map designs to boost their numbers at the expense of colorblind districting. And I think the districts need to be drawn colorblind and partisan blind too. I know I'm repeating myself, but I still think it's a good idea. The districts should be drawn with an algorithm or an AI. And all it needs to know is exactly, you can put the map into the system and you have the census for what's residential, how many people, and again, not just people, how many citizens dwell in that house. They can't dwell in another house. That's where they live. And not that they're registered to vote. They don't have to be registered to vote. And of course, minors wouldn't be registered to vote. So how many citizens live in a house or an apartment building, condos, townhomes? I don't care. You know what it is. And there needs to be approximately 700,000 people in a seat. So draw the line. But the data you don't put in is their race or ethnicity or religion they practice, or even their registered party, or if they've voted. None of that should be calculated. Our districts should be as straight lines as possible. We should not have these gerrymandered shapes that are all bizarre, where sometimes it's just a small, very thin or narrow stretch of land, almost like the width of, say, 128, the north and bound, south and northbound side, to connect it to something. No, knock all that off. Then we had, on May 8th, just a few days ago, Virginia voters narrowly approved a Democratic-backed constitutional amendment for mid-decade redistricting. And the Virginia Supreme Court, in a 4-3 decision, struck the entire effort down on procedural grounds. Democrats in the state legislature had rushed the referendum onto the April 21st ballot in violation of the Virginia Constitution's multi-step process for amendments. What do you call that? Arrogance? Right? What did I mean? Well, they want this to get through. So we're just going to put it on the ballot and we're going to, leapfrog a couple of the steps. We're not going to do it the way our own Constitution tells us how we got to do it. Because we want it on there because it's going to pass. We'll know it's passed because we put a lot of money into it. It's going to pass and we're going to be good. But we don't care what the rules are because nobody challenges us, right? Nobody's going to bring it up. And the Republicans that bitch and moan about it, That's what they do, but they can't do anything. No, not in this case, though, because it was challenged and it was taken to court and went up to the highest court in Virginia, and a 4-3 decision struck it down. And it was on the procedural because you leapfrogged and you cut corners and you didn't think you had to play by the rules that are laid out. So it's in violation of the state's constitution and multi-step process for amendments. They moved too late after early voting had already begun in the prior election. That's the other thing. You want to put this on when voting already started because you have ridiculously early voting. That's another thing I think that needs to be addressed in how we vote. You can't be voting for months. You can't vote before, say, all the debates happen or anybody's paying attention. That's also silly. But anyway, the court ruled the violation incurably taints the referendum, nullifying the vote and ordering the state to use the existing 2022 to 2024 congressional maps for this 26 midterm elections. Those maps stay in place through the decade unless future bipartisan commission draws them post the 2030 census. But we've talked about that. That's another conversation, right? We'll get into the census because if what members of the Trump administration and the current administration are trying to say goes through, what are you talking about, Joe? I'm talking about for purposes of the Electoral College, only citizens are counted, not just bodies. We'll count the bodies. Sure, we count the bodies. I think we need to know how many souls are living in each state, legal or illegal. We just need to know that for other reasons. But when it comes down to being represented in Congress, we should be only calculating in those that are citizens. But I digress. So what Democrats had planned in Virginia was textbook race-influenced gerrymandering on steroids here, folks. Their proposed map would have flipped the state's delegation from a fairly competitive 6-5 Democratic edge to a very lopsided 10-1 Democratic advantage, netting them up to 4 additional House seats by just simply carving out Republican strongholds and packing Democratic voters often along racial lines because that's what they think. Because the people who run the Democratic Party, I don't care how much they try to soften it, but this is the soft racism, right? Bigotry here. Oh, well, we'll just draw the line so that there's more black neighborhoods in that Republican district, and that's all Democratic voters, right? Yeah, it is. Of course they are. They're black, right? Remember Biden said, if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black. Well, he was right. That's how they think. So it would have really hurt those Republican districts by packing with neighborhoods that are mostly occupied by black Americans into these super safe districts. So this was their counter to Republican-led redraws like, Texas, North Carolina, Florida. And now the southern states, emboldened by the SCOTUS VRA ruling, are looking at this and saying, for decades, our districts have been based on race. So we need to redraw them without that calculation in there. So Democrats have openly relied on race-based map making using Voter Rights Act laws or legislative muscle to draw these lines for decades because they wanted to, and I'm air quoting, ensure minority representation. Well, conveniently ensuring those minority voters who lean heavily Democratic, are concentrated in ways that waste Republican votes elsewhere. So they needed and they used the idea that black people always vote Democrat to soften those Republican districts. And the court said, hey, enough. Stop it. Districts must be drawn primarily on traditional criteria: compactness, communities of interest, continuity, and not racial headcounts to engineer the outcomes. And you would think that the sky is falling. Have you seen the reaction on talk shows and stuff? Go watch some of these CNN and MSN Now clips and stuff. This is unconstitutional, and this is Jim Crow 2.0 again. They dragging that one out. So how does it change districts going forward? No more racial quotas in the map making. SCOTUS has made it far harder to challenge non-racial maps under the VRA. Southern and urban states can no longer be forced into extra majority black or extra Hispanic districts if the data doesn't justify it under strict scrutiny. This levels the field where race was previously weaponized. And Virginia locked in. The current maps remain until 2031. No mid-decade Democratic gerrymandering here. Other states are watching. Mid-decade redraws are now legally radioactive unless they're done cleanly. They've got to be done very, very cleanly. So the broader ripple on this, guys, combined with the GOP advantages in states they do control, Republicans have netted or protected, maybe, seats across the map. So what say you? What with the SCOTUS decision? What happened in Virginia with their state Supreme Court? Do you think this has altered the outlook for 2026? Because now these states are redrawing and they can take that out of it. So do you think the Republicans will at least maintain control of the House, even though it's a very thin margin? Or could they actually pick up seats? Right? So what's the impact on the 2026 midterms in the Republican House chances? Republicans currently hold this narrow majority, right, heading into the midterms. And history says the president's party usually loses seats. And there have been some cases, right, where there's been like a 30 or 40 seat swing. We've seen that in our history. And this redistricting clarity is a structural firewall here. Virginia alone preserves up to those 4 GOP seats. And Democrats had already banked in their projections. So before Virginia came out with this, Hakeem Jeffries and all of them, they were looking right there. They were assuming. They were calculating and they were planning as if it was a given that they would flip 4 Republican seats in Virginia. So it's an 8 swing there. And that alone was going to give them at least a thin lead in the House. That's what they were banking on. Now, nationally, the SCOTUS ruling has triggered redraw pushes in other states. As I said, Louisiana, right? Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee. Mostly benefiting Republicans by eliminating, and I know what the Democrats, see, well, they're using it. Well, they're not using it as a weapon here. They're using it to neutralize the weaponization that had been put in place by using race to draw the lines. This is a correction. This is a course correction. This is addressing and rectifying the fact that race was already used as a weapon in these seats. So this is these states, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, they were all they're doing this to try to put it back. Because in general, and the Republicans should always try to get an advantage, but basically, I'm confident, or let's put it this way. Elections in districts, it should all be level playing fields in the sense that they should not be drawn to favor one party or another. And then I extend that across the board when it comes to elections. What do I mean by that? I mean that, yes, to draw the districts, we only use citizens. That elections are done in a secure manner. And what I mean from that is paper ballots. What I mean by that is we don't take mail-in ballots that don't have postmarks. We don't take them 14 days after the election, and we don't start electing 2 months out. And there is no mass mailing. There is no absentee ballot. If you can't physically go vote that day, we already had that in place before the pandemic. You get an absentee ballot from your city or town clerk, and they only mail it to the address of record, and they compare it on the back to determine it will be counted. And that none of these machines are sophisticated computers, no screens. Look what France went back to paper ballots because the corruption and the voter fraud was so out of control that they had to do that. So nationally, SCOTUS ruling has triggered these redraws in those places, all right? Estimates now put the GOP's redistricting edge at a potential net gain of 8 to 10 seats before a single vote is cast. That makes holding the majority and even expanding it by a little bit far more realistic, even in a tough political environment. The playing field isn't just more fair, it's finally colorblind and less rigged by one party's long-running strategy of dividing Republicans while concentrating their own base. So what say you? Is this good news? I'll get into Kim Jeffries in a second. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000. Let's go to Mark. Mark, happy Mother's Day. What say you?
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to you. Hey, and we don't accept personal checks either. You know what I mean? No personal checks.
No personal checks.
Yeah, no voter ID, no mail-in, and no personal checks. I'm being facetious.
No, I get it. I agree with you.
Yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
voter ID. And Mark, Mark,
no
the Save
personal-
America
and no
Act, right? When
personal
you go
check.
to register to vote, at that point, one time, I think you need to show you're a citizen when you do it the first time. Once the town clerk has seen the birth certificate or whatever, that's it. All you need at the voting poll then is your ID.
Well, the next time you go down to Mexico, and you go to Mexico City, and it happened to be while you're down there a presidential election for the presidency in Mexico, and you're an American citizen, try doing it. Good luck to you. And don't get caught doing it, or you will see very soon the inside of a Mexican jail, and you don't want to go there.
Yeah. Mexico has some of the toughest immigration laws ever, folks.
Yeah, you
But
ain't
yet
kidding, they do.
Yet they're okay. They waive, and this is the thing that I don't think people always understood, Mark. I know you do because you're tuned into this, but that's what Trump was saying to Mexico is you need to secure your southern border because you have these tough immigration laws, but when they come in the southern border in these caravans, you know they're just passing through you.
You know why they did nothing? You know why I'll tell you why they did nothing. Because the federales were taking money from the cartels to transport these people up. Billions of dollars changed hands. And that's why the Mexican government didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole because they were making billions of dollars on the deal. It's all about the peso, man. Down when you're down Mexico way. You know that. You've been down there before.
Yep. No, you're right in your principal comments here is exactly that, and that's what Trump said. He said to the president, he said, "Hey, you just have to ask. If you ask for help with the cartels, I will give it to you. I can't just come into your country and do it for you, unless." And he did this. He's classified some of these cartels as what? Terrorist organizations. That changes our toolbox, folks. It changes
well,
the rules of engagement.
what it does, and I think Trump thinks this up on his own, a lot of it. He does his own research, because Pam Bondi, she didn't do any research. That's why she's gone. And you notice, since she's gone, some indictments are starting to come down. Have you noticed that?
And I think you'll see a lot more, Mark.
Oh, absolutely, there's going to be a lot more. You know why? Because Pam Bondi ain't there no more.
And a lot of them, Mark, again, Mark is more tuned into a lot of this, I think, than some listeners. No offense to anyone, but I talked about this several months ago. There were actually a lot of indictments down in the Florida District Court having to do with the Georgia 2020 election. And remember the seize, right? They seized a lot of the records and the tapes. And when they've had the grand jury down there, they got indictments. So that means once you get the indictment, warrants are being made. There's going to be arrest warrants. You'll see this happen, and probably a lot of it before the election.
Maybe they're starting to sift through the boxes and boxes
oh my God.
of evidence that were taken off of Epstein Island, that lo and behold, some paparazzi from the New York Post got it all on film, so they can't deny it. And have you gone through all that evidence yet, or you're just letting it collect dust?
Yeah. We saw that. We saw the videos of that, and that's been a question since then, Mark, right? Where the hell is all that? And I mentioned this before. I'll reiterate it for everybody. A warrant is you apply for the warrant, you get the warrant, you have to lay out to the judge your argument why you can violate the Fourth and all of that. And the judge says, you know what, there's enough there, sure. I'm going to issue this warrant. But when they execute the warrant, Mark, and to everyone else, everything has to be inventory. So everything, there's catalog and inventory. So the question is, where the hell is the inventory from that seizure? How many towers were taken? How many boxes? What were in the boxes? Where is it? So that's the question we should be asking. Trump should be asking, hey, what's the inventory of that day? And I'll illustrate this point, because when the FBI went to Rudy Giuliani's place, because remember the laptop, right? He actually had the stuff from the guy, the blind guy in the shop. And there was the towers with the copies of everything there. And Giuliani said to one of the FBI agents, hey, wait a minute. They're taking all this crap out of his place. He goes, you want those? You're going to take those? Because he knows if he takes those, it has to be put on
the
ledger.
No, I don't want them.
I don't want them. No, we're not touching them, because then there's a paper trail, and the government admitted that they've taken it. It's crazy. Final thought, Mark? Oh, did we lose Mark?
He's gone.
Oh, he said good one. I didn't hear that. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Mark, for the call. Always appreciate it. So, yeah, that just illustrates the point. Giuliani's like, take those. I want you to take them. Nope. Because then it becomes part of the inventory list from the seizure at Giuliani's. And now there's a record. And then somebody can say, well, let's look on those computers. So the question becomes, when it comes to Epstein Island, where's the inventory list from that day? How many towers, how many boxes, what were, and all the, that's how they do that. So the thing is, the day after, and we just had this, the 8th, right? After Virginia's referendum passed in April, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries took the mic and delivered his tough guy warning. to Florida Republicans considering their own maps. Our message, and this is him saying, well, obviously not me, our message to Florida Republicans is F around and find out. He framed it as Democrats striking back against MAGA power grabs. Now, fast forward a couple weeks, Virginia Supreme Court just made Jeffries the one who found out if you F around. His party's carefully engineered 10-1 Virginia map, paid for in part by millions in Democratic dark money, by the way, it's dead. Court ruled you can't do it. Procedurally, you just jammed it in there. And again, that's why I said arrogance. The arrogance of the Democrats in Virginia was we can just deal with it. Just like we had a lot of Democratic governors and secretaries of state just change the voting laws. The voters will be celebrated. They nullified it. All right, folks, we got to take our next break here and come back with the 11 o'clock hour on the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, reminding you can join the conversation. Lines open and available. 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. Hey, text at Will. Feel free to give me a text at 617-297-8388. We'll be back on the other side for the third and final hour of the Sunday edition.
WCRN. Fox News. I'm Paul Stevens. Possible signs of diplomatic progress between the U.S. and Iran.
Reports indicate that Iran has responded to the U.S. peace proposal to end the war, giving their response to Pakistani mediators. Now, initial reports in Iranian state media indicate their response focuses on ending the war and ensuring security in the Strait of Hormuz. There is no mention of Iran's nuclear program.
Trey Yingst, Tel Aviv. The first passengers who got off a cruise ship where deadly hantavirus cases first broke out are now flying out of the Canary Islands.
Officials say none of those passengers have shown symptoms of the virus yet. 17 Americans will soon be flown to Nebraska, where they'll be monitored by a CDC team. At least 6 more states are monitoring cruise passengers who previously disembarked.
And that's Fox's Chanley Painter. America's listening to Fox News.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Hey, good morning. You're heading to the airport, right?
Yep, thanks for checking. I like the car. How long have you been a rideshare driver?
About 3 years now. I really enjoy it.
Isn't it hard to make money these days with the price of gas being so high?
Not for me. I use Upside, the free app that gives you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get real money back when you get gas with the Upside app?
Yep, I get real cash back every time I get gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make around $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the Upside app now.
Download the free Upside app now to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code TAXI for an extra 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank account, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code TAXI for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code TAXI.
All right, folks, welcome back to the third and final hour here in the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. And the Joe Mangiacotti Show is sponsored this hour in part by Heart to Home Meals. Delicious, ready-to-heat meals for seniors, delivered free with no subscription required. And again, I've told you folks, I have some in the freezer. I use the service. There's like 150 things on there. And when you get something you like, you can order a few of those and they deliver them. They put them right in your freezer. And I love it because, it just takes a lot of hassle about planning meals and cooking and all that kind of jazz. So Heart to Home Meals, check them out. And I'll tell you a little bit more about them a little later in this hour. But this hour is brought to you in part by Heart to Home Meals. They think, yeah, you should give them a try, and I agree with them. You should give them a try. Check them out. So the ceasefire, you heard the news there, very fragile ceasefire. And Rubio was great the other day because one of the reporters, and he did the same thing Trump does. He actually, and I love to see politicians say to reporters, because it hopefully makes them better at their job. And they say, that's a stupid question. Or how do you frame that way? Because they said about, oh, well, we, the United States, we actually fired during the ceasefire. And Rubio is like, seriously? Because we were fired upon, or they violated the rules. Then, of course, what are we going to say? Oh, we're in a ceasefire. We can't strike back. And it's so refreshing to see somebody at the podium call out the absolute stupidity of some of these questions from reporters. So the U.S.-Israel military campaign here, it began back on February 28th. Now we're stretched into our third month of this, which in the big picture of things is a short time if you think about the 20-year wars that we've had, and this certainly is not going to be that. But what started as a series of targeted strikes aimed at degrading Iran's nuclear programs and missile capabilities and proxy networks involved into this kind of standoff centered on one of the world's most vital energy arteries, right? The Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of global oil goes through there. A significant share of liquefied natural gas normally pass through this choke point between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. And Iran's effective blockade since the war's outset has created the largest disruption of world energy markets since probably the 70s oil crisis. But it doesn't affect us that much, right? We're now producing and shipping energy out of the country. And Trump said it, hey, come, get your oil here. And why? So that's one of the reasons I think this gets missed sometimes, folks. The price gas here, it's all based on futures and so forth in the replacement cost. And if we're producing so much oil and we're actually building refineries for the first time in decades, and if all that's going on, why is the gas price still so high? I mean, not as high as under Biden, under the Green New Deal stuff, but high. And part of that is we're selling so much oil outside of the country. So the demand, right? It's a supply-demand thing. Very simple. You understand it. So even though we're producing a lot of oil, a lot of it is leaving our country. It's tankers getting filled up, right? The whole traffic, ocean traffic has changed. Tankers are now headed, right, to the Panama Canal. They're going to the West Coast. They're filling up, and they're getting the oil back. And that's what Trump is saying. But we don't get 20% of our oil from that strait. So it's not really on us, which is why Trump is like, to these countries, European countries, and some of the other, like Japan, why are you not on board with this? This is your future that we're dealing with. This is energy that you get, including China. Okay? So this fragile ceasefire took hold late April, but it's been repeatedly tested, right? Tit for tat incidents at sea. Iran maintains control over much of the waterway through their mines, but then are the mines there? Because we got the sweepers in. Finally, right? London, not why I say London. UK finally showed up with a minesweeper, but we haven't found any. Small boats, drones, anti-ship missiles. They got almost basically teenagers, right? Late teens or 20-year-old guys in those Boston whalers, running around, going up against United States battleships. It's crazy. Now, the Trump administration rebranded its naval efforts as Project Freedom, right? So they changed it to Project Freedom. This stated goal was defensive and temporary escort commercial vessels safely through the strait, protect neutral shipping, and ease the economic pressure on global markets. Sounds pretty good, don't it? Good goal, good idea. Thank you, America. Defense Secretary, Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth described it as a gift to the world. The operation launched May 4th and 5th. Navy's destroyers guiding a handful of U.S. flagships almost immediately. Now, clashes have erupted, right? We've had some skirmishes, I guess. Is that the word we want to use, skirmishes? U.S. forces reported destroying 6 to 7 Iranian small boats and disabling Iranian flagged oil tankers attempting to breach our blockade, the American blockade of Iranian ports. Iran countered by launching missiles and drones and small boat swarms at U.S. guided missile destroyers. I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do. Tehran claimed significant damage to American assets. Now, as a side thing, have you noticed this? Iran, or Tehran as their capital, right? They come out with this stuff. And it's propaganda. It's absolutely fake news. But they're trying to convince their own citizens that all this is worth it and justified, and we're having great success. Now, countries do that. World War II, when you went in the movie theater, right? Not me. I wasn't around. But I know from history. Before the movie aired, what would you see? A short movie, a clip that the Defense Department put together. Back then it was the War Department. Of our troops have done this and our troops have done that. But here, and I don't blame Iran. I mean, they're doing what they think they need to do. But our own media swallows it. Because anything that helps make the Trump administration and now Pete Hegseth look bad or like they're lying, they're all for it. We're not going to calculate into the fact that this is propaganda from Iran. We're not going to look at their history of just complete fabrication and lying and all of that. We'll take it, what they're saying, so that we can say, this isn't working. America hasn't accomplished anything, and look what they're doing, right? I mean, they broadcast to their people that they hit the Lincoln, and the Lincoln was burning, and that actually got on to American news. And the State Department the Department of War actually has to come out and say, the USS Lincoln is not burning. The Lincoln's fine. It didn't happen. But our media, the mainstream media, the left-leaning media, was also too happy to perpetrate the lie and share it. Anyway, we had these clashes of erupted, right? U.S. forces reported destroying 6-7 Iranian small boats, disabling Iranian flag oil tankers, breaching the American blockade of Iranian ports. And then they launched all these little things. Tehran claimed significant damage to American assets. They claimed it. Doesn't mean it's true, but you can claim whatever you want. And the Pentagon had to deny, calling the Iranian actions unprovoked and responding in self-defense. Iran also fired on targets in the United Arab Emirates, triggering missile alerts in Dubai and other Gulf cities. Trump addressed these incidences with characteristic bluntness, right? He downplayed the U.S. retaliatory strikes. Did you see that? He referred to them as just a love tap. They needed a love tap. And insisted the ceasefire remained in effect, and warned that any further Iranian aggression would result in Iran being blown off the face of the earth. Now, at the same time, he expressed optimism that broader deal was within reach. And this goes to, and what say you on this, right? Because they're negotiating, and Trump a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks now, he put an end to this whole back and forth with the negotiation, meaning every time they're like, oh, well, yes, we got something to put on the table, we're going to agree to something. Trump said, we're stopping this because we do a 15-hour flight, right? Hexa or whoever goes over, Besson or Jared and Kushner, this one and that one, 15-hour flight, only to sit at the table, and the people at the table have no decision-making ability, no authority. It's a stall tactic. And they've done it. They did it to Obama and Biden and Clinton and Bush, and to some degree, even Trump in his first term. Iranians have learned how to stall. They will be indignant, and they will say, look, we need this time, we need this, and we need, all while doing whatever the hell they want, or exactly opposite of what they're agreeing to. So that's just a tactic. And Trump said, no more of that. You have the phone, pick up the phone, call us when you got a real thing to do. But the bottom line on this is Trump, I hope he doesn't give in on this, because this is all for nothing if he does. And that they cannot possess a nuclear, they just can't have nuclear weapons, and certainly ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. They did tip their hand a little bit when they sent the missiles to Diego, I'm drawing a blank on the island. Diego Garcia? Okay. The island, 2,500 miles away. And they're telling us that the missiles can't get anywhere near 2,000 miles. So they have missiles that have longer ranges than they're admitting to. And in a weird thing, when we sat down for the first talks, what was the first thing out of their mouths, right? They said to our people, we have enough nuclear weapon grade uranium for 11 bombs. So Project Freedom itself was remarkably short, right? Less than 48 hours after it began, Trump announced pause, citing great progress, negotiations, and then Iran requests the allies to stop the blockade and come back to the table. And the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports, it remains in place. In active escort operations, that they were suspended to give diplomacy breathing room here, but Iran says it's reviewing U.S. proposals. No final agreement has been announced as of this weekend, but they keep saying these things and they're lying about this stuff. So the other part of this, I brought this up before, and I want some kind of feedback on this. So 508-871-7000. We're pretending that whatever the agreement comes, how it comes, that it's going to be honored. But we have to remember that the mullahs in the caves that are really running it, the people you see with the big fancy uniforms, not so much. And that as long as these people, who are the same ilk of people that had the coup in 1979 and who govern based on their belief and understanding of the Quran, is running the country, which means the standards and norms of regular diplomacy that the rest of the world operates under is moot to them, because their goal is for Islam to spread to every home. And if you aren't converting to Muslim, then you need, by their rules, you're an infidel, which your death is justified, or you got to pay the tax for humiliation. That's who's running the country. And I think we need a regime change. We need the Iran of the 60s and 70s, not 79 coup forward, what we've had for the last 47 years. So Steve Jobs, again, he was on Fox, and I caught this. It was great. Regime change in Iran is non-negotiable. Fanatical theocrats must go. And that's the position. I agree with Steve Forbes on this, guys. Now, he's chairman, or you know him, right? He's run for president, chairman, editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, has been a very clear and consistent voice on Fox News and Fox Business, calling for very decisive action against Iran's ruling regime. He's been in multiple appearances in opinion pieces, and he's been Kudlow, The Big Money Show, The Bottom Line, Fox News op-eds. He argues that the U.S. is past the point of no return and that anything short of overthrowing the extremist government will be a strategic disaster. Duh. I agree with that. I've been saying this, you guys. The government cannot be these religious fanatics in the caves. You cannot let them call it, because they're calling it based on their understanding of what the world is, and it doesn't fit in with modern day diplomacy or even modern day politics. Forbes describes Iran's leaders not as misunderstood pragmatists, which I love it when you got somebody usually progressive on these podcasts and shows. And we had presidents who acted like if we just treat them nice and give them all this money, which they look at us when we do that, and we lift sanctions as we're idiots, that they've played us. They're not rational actors. They are fanatical revolutionaries and bloodthirsty mullahs. And they're very much wedded to an ugly, radical, deformed version of Islam. Forbes says he emphasizes their foundation of ideology, exporting terror, eradicating Israel, and ultimately confronting us, the United States. This is the regime whose motto has long included death to America. Why do we gloss over that part? They've been saying it for nearly 50 years, and we've just okay, that's just them. So key points on this, guys. And actually, I think I have a clip of him for Forbes, actually, talking about wiping them out. So let's play that and listen to him.
That kind of destruction can be repaired, as we've seen in the past. If that regime stays in, it tells the world, America, it doesn't have the stamina to see things through. When Russia's going to draw conclusions in Ukraine, Chinese are going to draw conclusions. So destroying stuff, yeah, very good. Destroying the factories, absolutely essential. But if that regime stays in, we know what's going to happen. They're going to eventually rebuild and come back. Look what Germany after World War I came back. Look at Egypt after the Six-Day War in 1967. 6 years later, they nearly defeated Israel in the field. And without our aid, they might have done it. So these regimes can come back. And if that snake is still there, it's going to bite again. And the Arab nations and the world will know they can close the Strait of Hormuz. Keep at them until you create the conditions, especially those local militias, keep destroying that infrastructure so that people have a chance to rise up, and they're parts of the military made up of conscripts and officers who are not really part of this regime. I know we're talking to them. I'm sure we are. I don't know firsthand, obviously. Create conditions for regime change. Again, that regime stays, the world loses.
So that was his take on, I think, Big Money or one of those shows. And I agree with him. And what say you on this? Does Trump get this? Does Hexeth get this? Is the real goal here that they're not sharing because, as Trump said, why would I ever tell you this? When they ask, oh, are you going to bomb this or do this? Who announces military plans? Put a pin in that. So is the real objective here that they're not admitting publicly is the regime change? Because as long as, again, Forbes used it, I actually just used some of the terminology of what they are, bloodthirsty mullahs, and they're fanatical revolutionaries, right? And they have this really ugly, radical, deformed version of Islam that they're operating on. They need to be removed. They can't be the ones that just, because as long as they're there, no matter what is signed or agreements done, they will order everything to happen again. Rebuild the tunnels, rebuild the underground sites, start doing the whole thing over again. Build drones, missiles. You saw how quickly they were willing to shoot at their alleged brothers and allies in that region. So it comes down to this. If the regime survives, it is a victory for them, and it is absolutely our defeat. If that regime survives, they win, and the free world and America loses. Any negotiations without the regime change are very dangerous illusions, folks. The mullahs see any pause or deal as proof their strategy is working. They will regroup, rebuild nuclear capabilities, and continue their proxy wars. It's what they do. 100% of what they do. I get another text is like way too long to read. You can't send 5-6 paragraphs, guys. It's not going to happen in the middle of a live show. So the religious zealotry to the core, right? So Forbes, he stresses that these are not corrupt officials who can be bought off with hotels or tariffs or anything. They conflate their own survival with the survival of their twisted vision of Islam. Look, they murder their own people by the thousands, right? Protesters and detainees and armed proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, and they pursue these nuclear weapons and missiles, not for defense. That's the key, right? Not for defense, but for apocalyptic leverage. The nuclear Cold War was about deterrent. And that's why everybody agrees this particular group of people, the religious zealots in charge of Iran, can't have a nuclear weapon. Because once World War II ended and we entered the Cold War, the nuclear Cold War, it was all about the deterrent of a nuclear war. It was all about having enough weapons to blow the world up 10 times over so the other guy wouldn't even think about it. The thought of doing that scared the bejesus out of him. And that's why Trump has said over and over again, if somebody starts throwing nuclear bombs around, that's the end of it. So kudos to Forbes. I'm going to say he's echoing what I've been saying for a long time now. Finally, but he got to say it on national TV. Is we got to understand that the regime in Iran has got to change. You got to get these fanatic Islam twisting mullahs out of there. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let's go to Tom in Lunenburg. Hey, Tom, what say you?
Hey, how's it going? How's it going? You want to make them really come to the table and put fear into the cockles of their heart. Did you ever hear Sharia law?
Of course.
The Sharia law with the Muslims? You know what they feared the most? Because I used to have a buddy in the Marines down to Guantanamo when they got the terrorists, Al-Qaeda and all that, and when they used to question them. And they used to put fear into them. They'd tell you anything. when they die, right? When they die, they go to heaven. They're going to get 72 virgins. That's what the Sharia law and the Quran
Muhammad,
says. So you know what they used to do to get information? They'd threaten them. A Muslim man has to produce kids under Sharia law. They have to produce kids. And if they can't produce kids, they do not go to heaven and get the 72 virgins. So they used to threaten them. They were going to cut their private part off.
Castrate.
Oh, and they said, read it. That's true. This has been going on for centuries. And they were getting all the information out. That's how they nabbed bin Laden. They got some of the information. They caught bin Laden. He was in Pakistan because they threatened. That's what you got to do to these people. They're playing us. The ones that's meeting with our negotiators, they're playing us. Oh, we're not. And then they come back 3 weeks ago, and then they come back a month ago. They're playing you. Don't you see this stuff?
Yeah.
You gotta hit them hard. Hit them hard. That car guy.
No, Tom, you're right. Okay, I agree with you that the delay tactic, it's all a tactic to delay. Well, they still continue. There's got to be a regime change because no matter what we agree to, and thank you for the call, Tom, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. Don't you understand that? You got to understand that. 508-871-7000 lines open. We're going to take our 11:30 break here. We'll come back on the other side, folks, and we'll continue and wrap up at the final half hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN.
Dr. Satya Mitra has journeyed from a childhood of poverty and homelessness to a successful career as a financial advisor, motivational speaker, and community leader. Now inspired by his guru, he uses his experiences to positively affect the lives of underprivileged people. We strive to house our blindness, poverty, homelessness, female empowerment, and good citizenship initiatives within the Joy Guru Humanitarian Center. If you wish to contribute or know of deserving persons or initiatives that could use our assistance, please contact us at 508-641-8441.
Bad decisions limit future options. Stop adversity from becoming stress. Listen to the Float Line with Rick Hughes, Sundays at 8:30 a.m. Problem-solving devices built on God's Word. Inspiration and education, all without manipulation. Sundays at 8:30 a.m. If you've ever worried about a parent or a loved one eating well, here's a simple solution. Heart to Home Meals delivers great tasting, ready-to-eat frozen meals made with seniors in mind. With over 150 choices, it's easy to find meals that fit different tastes and dietary needs. There's no subscription and no minimum order. And delivery is always free. Heart to Home Meals, a smart, comforting way to make sure good food is always close by. HeartToHomeMeals.com.
Learn how you can make your retirement exactly what you want it to be. Join attorney Jeff Monfett for Retirement Security every Monday and Friday afternoon at 2. Set the stage for a worry-free retirement with Retirement Security right here on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN.
When I need the best cuisine for an event, my answer, Ziti's. Make that graduation party an enjoyable catered affair. Ziti's Restaurante, Speedway Plaza in Westboro. Ziti's.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final half hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Russ, we have Peter from Riverside, Rhode Island is on the line. All right. Hey, Peter, happy Mother's Day. What say you?
Well, here's what I say. The problem with Islam or the Muslims goes right back to the Crusades, and they were very bloody and horrible battles that were going on. And at one point, the one of the knights, I don't know if it was the Templars or whoever's doing all the fighting, they made an appointment, or they were talking to an emissary of the Pope, and they said, "Look, we're going into all these villages and we're killing as many people as we can, but there's a lot of innocent people. What are we supposed to do? How do we handle that?" And the cold-hearted fact and the statement that was made to the knights was, "Kill them all and let God sort them out," because there's no dealing with them. Now, that's cold, barbaric, and practically unimaginable in today's environment, politically and social. But when you see what's going on and you see how determined that they are to sacrifice and martyr themselves for this uranium, that's the only answer. And Marco Polo, if you go into the Google or whatever it is, and you put Marco Polo and the Muslims, he explains when he was on his tour around the world or wherever he went, how difficult it was to deal with them because of Sharia law. It's not something that's going to be resolved diplomatically. It's going to be resolved by the sword. And how can you fathom what you have to do that? You have to do just what they said: kill them all and let God sort them out. And that's a terrible, terrible, terrible way to look at life, and to look at a whole country. I mean, it's insane.
Well, Peter, an example, right? So let's go back to when Jefferson was president, and they were attacking everybody, but now this new country, America, exists, and they're attacking our ships. And so Jefferson went, or he sent emissaries on the Barbary Coast. Why are you attacking our ships? And then they would attack a ship, get the booty, and enslave the captain and sailors. And their response was, because we're allowed to, because Quran tells us to, that you're infidels and we can do this. So basically the answer was because we feel like it and we want to. And that's when Jefferson, okay. And, you know, the Marine Corps was called into action in our Navy, and that was it. But that's what it was, and that's where they're at. And I think everyone's going to understand, because we're drilled into us, right? Especially on the left here, Peter. Religion of peace and so forth. Not quite. And the Sharia law and you can't let Sharia law into this country. Right?
No,
we're seeing calls to prayer on public ways. Where what the hell is a Muslim prayer room is in the Vatican today?
It's in the public schools. It's everywhere. Listen, they have their what do they call their Bible?
Quran.
The Quran. The Quran is their constitution. It's their Bill of Rights. There is no difference between freedom of speech and the Quran. And the trouble with it is, if you say, well, you know, this verse right here, I think we're misinterpreted. They say, oh, you're questioning Allah. They put a knife in you. Anybody that questions the Quran gets killed because you're an infidel or you're a heretic. They will not separate their religion from their way of life. And it is, you can't do it, and you can't live with them like that. I mean, when you talk, like in England, in England, they've got areas where they can't even, a Christian or a Jew can't even go in there.
The police don't even go in there, Peter. There are neighborhoods. There are neighborhoods in London right now, and in France, and in Germany, where the police will not go in there because the local Muslim population is practicing Sharia law, and the police won't even go in there because it's too dangerous. And they're told by their own mayors and government leaders not to. That's why you've got this revolution going on in England, where they call it, you know, the rapists, because of the increase in rape, especially among young women and young boys. By the way, the media doesn't really get into that. It doesn't matter.
Right.
There's young boys and girls being raped.
Just go back to the night going to the emissary of the Pope. What do? You got an area where you can't go in there. Well, yeah, you can go in there, but the result will be blood in the streets. it'll be a nut house until you get it straightened out. But the fact is, they don't have the willpower to do it. They'd rather, it's back in the days when they used to say, "I'd rather be red than dead."
Yeah. And the latest thing, Peter, I don't know if you caught this because they also, I don't even know if it's in the Quran, but they feel they don't like dogs, right? For whatever, they don't let them in the house. So now, like in New York, they're saying that they don't want dogs being walked to be curbed. They can't have them out there. They can't have them in their neighborhoods. They're demanding that we in the United States start following the rules of Sharia law and the rules of Islam to make it nice for them. No, I don't want these mullahs in Iran running a country any more than I would want Pope Leo running the United States or any other country. You got to have that separation of the church and state. And if your church is a mosque, it applies there too. Stop
Well,
it.
they don't, because they don't have it. Their state is the
Exactly.
Quran.
That is my point.
There is no separation, and what they hate pigs too. So I think they ought to get a bunch of dogs and pigs and run them all through the streets. That'll get rid of them all. They'll have to leave town, and they hate naked women too. If you see a naked woman, you got to go kill yourself. So get a bunch of women running around naked.
Again, you cannot have this. This is why everything going on now. If this and hopefully. The whole plan has always been to change the regime. They're just not admitting it because you cannot have it, right? First of all, if you're a good Muslim and you are going to live by the Quran, it's in contradiction to the United States Constitution. So when Ilhan Omar or any of these other Muslims in Congress, when they put their hand on the Quran and they take their oath of office, well, does that mean, are they lying about honoring the Constitution and defending the Constitution of the United States and doing away with their Islam? Or are they down? You see what I'm saying? You can't coexist.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You go right back to the night when he's talking to the bishop or whatever. And what are we going to do? Here's the answer. And then you're not going to do it. So,
got it.
Sleep well. And then the people that hear me or hear you, they got their fingers in their ears, their eyes closed, and then they got someone else covering their mouth so they don't hear the explanation. I can't say it. But anyway, they don't believe it. Oh, no.
Peter.
You're misunderstanding it.
Peter, are you the first time calling me or calling the Peter? Have you called Peter in the past?
A couple of times.
Say again?
I've called before.
Okay.
I've called before.
Okay. I don't remember you, but thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. Appreciate
Well, hey,
it.
listen, and just remember, that's where that expression came from, that the soldiers of fortune all have on their arm with the beret and the skeleton head. Kill them all and let God sort them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it is barbaric on its face, but what we're dealing with, again, and thank you for the call again, Peter, appreciate it, folks, is that the mission of Islam is to be in every home, and they're allowed to smile to your face and lie, and they even say, they'll put on the suits and they'll play the part to get elected. But when you look at the elected bodies now, like in England, in London, and the mayors, I think the top 14 of the top cities in the United Kingdom are Muslim mayors now. So there's a plan. I believe there's a plan here, and it's the slow takeover of Islam into all countries. That's exactly the stated interest. It is what it is, guys. And just look at what's going on with the dogs. They literally want us to get rid of our dogs, and I think they're going to have a problem with the dog owners of the United States. 508-871-7000. Let's go to Tom Brockton. Hey, Tom. Happy Mother's Day. What say you?
Good morning, Joe. And I'm glad you're talking about this. All I can tell you is that after 9/11, I was told by people like George W. Bush and Oprah Winfrey, Islam is a peaceful and tolerant religion. At that time in 2001, the only thing I really knew about Islam was Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a lot of African Americans, converted to Islam, and it wasn't an issue with me. I mean, it's just a different form of praying to the Father Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
So what I learned through the W. Bush years, I started listening to a woman who was from Lebanon. She's an Arab Christian. She's an indigenous person to that part of the world. And I love to use that word indigenous because she was a Lebanese Christian. And what happened with Lebanon was the wonderful Palestinian refugees started a civil war in that country. And if you bother to do a little bit of research, you will see that in the last century in the Middle East, Christians comprised maybe 15% of the population in Northern Africa and the Middle East. It's now down to like 1%. I mean, you've got to Google it, but and why is that? And it's because that they've been basically pushed out, not felt to be welcomed. And we're seeing, and she is the one that exposed, in 2006, she went to a mosque, and she speaks fluent Arabic. And she went into a mosque in suburban Chicago, and the cleric, while the videotape was going, basically said what we Americans want to hear, that peace, love, and love thy neighbor, all the above. In Arabic, he said, if you are to be a Muslim, you are not to befriend Christians or Jews or non-believers, infidels. And I've read on history that with regards to a couple of countries, one, there was Hungary, where the Mohammedans or the Ottoman Empire wanted to take over one part of Hungary, and they got lucky because of a cold fall that came in, and it got rid of 200,000 of those soldiers, and I can't name the particular city right now. The other one was in 1683 in Vienna. That city was surrounded by 200,000 soldiers of the Ottoman Empire with the intent of taking it over. And they basically told the inhabitants that if you give up and surrender and convert to Islam, you'll be treated fairly. If you don't, you will be beheaded. And the whole Ottoman Empire had this policy of basically invading other parts that were non-Muslim. And the word Islam means to submit. It doesn't mean peace and tolerance. It means to submit. And it is the only one of the major religions that if you leave that religion, there's a very good chance you will be murdered by other practitioners of that. And I've known a lot of Catholics. I'm not a Catholic myself, but left the Catholic Church for a variety of reasons. And maybe their families were upset with them, but nobody murdered their children for doing so, or their relatives. And that is one thing about that religion, that when you're in a majority Muslim nation and you leave, you decide to leave that, you're probably going to have to leave that country.
Tom, also, your typical non-Muslim father would not behead his own daughter for bringing shame by going out alone unescorted in a dress that show, above her knee, which a few years ago we had the case in Chicago, right, where it's called an honor killing. The daughter dishonored because she went out with a white American boy. She didn't dress in the burqa, and she dishonored the family in Muslim eye, and according to Sharia law. So he beheaded her. Do you remember the headlines? It got in the news, but it got swept under.
Yeah, no, and you know something, CNN will not report something like that. You'll have to hear that.
That was on American soil, by the way. In case you listeners didn't catch the part where I said outside Chicago, that was on American soil.
Of course, and the thing is that we have a media that's complicit, that's aligned itself with leftists And there is an unholy alliance between people of the the LGBT plus movement.
What is that?
And as we've discussed in the past, there are people that are now coming out of the closet, so to speak, and saying, "Look, these people don't represent me." And it's obvious that it's happened in Western Europe. And the only thing that I've come to a conclusion that within Western civilization, there is an element of self-loathing of white people. And I know I'm generalizing, but all I can tell you, and all I can tell you is that if I go back to 1980, I had a roommate back then that was an aspiring jazz drummer. His first name was Rob. And he brought me to a couple of lectures because I didn't go to college. I went to technical school, but I went to Howard Zinn's lecture at Boston University on a Saturday night. And then I also went to a lecture with Noam Chomsky a few months later. And out of both of those things, I came out with like, where are these guys coming from? Do they want to tear this country down? And the one thing that with regards to Howard Zinn is when he talked about the war crimes of the America bombing Dresden. Well, the whole purpose of that bombing was to demoralize the German people. And it had nothing to do about stopping munitions, tank manufacturing, or whatever. And I thought to myself, as he's telling us that, us young, mostly white kids, well, he failed to mention that the Germans were doing the same thing, launching V-2 rockets into residential areas of England. And why were they doing that? To demoralize the English people. So, and I brought that up to roommate Rob. And he goes, you're just a typical American. You're always late with your rent. You're always late with your rent. You've got a car that you can't afford. And I was paying $100 for a 76 Buick Skylark at 20% interest back then. But anyway, it just, all I can tell you is that he caught up with me in 2019 on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And here's the moral of the story on that one. Tom retired at age 58. Rob now is living in Seattle, and Rob is the guy, the aspiring jazz drummer who says table for two.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, but back to the topic at hand, that with regards that, yes, there is definitely a movement within Muslims in this country of where, yes, do they want to take over? Absolutely. And the problem that's going on in Western Europe because of their lavish social programs, you literally have Muslim men that technically have multiple wives. They're not legally married to them under whether British law, but they're having children and they're outbreeding them. Now,
and the secondary, Tom, just to interject, the secondary motive in that is because this wife, second, third, fourth wife, are technically under our recognition are single mothers. So they're sucking as much benefits by putting unknown on the birth certificate. So they have these women who with multiple kids who are on England's version of food stamps, WIC, and welfare. And that's by design to put as much pressure on the capitalist world by, getting all of these dependents on what they say in England is the dole, right? They're on the dole.
Correct. Now, just for the record, my wife's from the Philippines. 10% of that country is Muslim. It's mainly in a section called Mindanao, which is the largest island in the Philippines, and they're in the southwestern part. And, previous to President Duarte, there were all kinds of attacks where some of the radicals swore an allegiance to ISIS. He sent in their military, and after a long skirmish back and forth, they finally reached a compromise. And in a heavily Catholic country, now, if you're Muslim, you're allowed to have up to 4 wives legally. You have to go through a process. And I'm going to make a prediction. You're going to see within 5 years in this country, you're going to see an organization like Council of Islamic American Relations, CARE, that's going to go to the Supreme Court and say, hey, we've had a 1,400-year tradition of this and separation of church and state. Who is the government to tell us this? Now, as you probably know, our Congress sometime in the 1800s passed a law against the Mormons. No, you're not going to have more than one wife legally in this country. And I'm going to make a prediction that highly educated white liberals from the Northeast are going to be the people that are going to be like, well, who are we to judge? Okay. And as the Massachusetts State Supreme Court once said 20 years ago, I guess it was, on gay marriage, marriage is an evolving paradigm. That was the decision that legalized gay marriage, which I don't have an issue with. It's a legally binding contract. However, for well over 150 years in this country, marriage has been between two people, a man and a woman. Obviously, that changed with, progressive movements in this country. But, do we really want to become a place like Jordan? And there are Muslims in Jordan that have left that country, that converted to Christianity. They can't go back into that country. And this, nonsense of coexistence that you see the bumper stickers on a Prius of coexist.
Yeah.
Really, how can you coexist with people that feel that you are less than them?
Yeah. And Tom, it comes to the old adage, right? You're free to do whatever makes you happy. You can't break the law, but your freedom stops right at the edge of my rights. So
yes, of course,
whatever you want to do within your home and your religion, except for like beheading your daughter for honor killing, but whatever it is, knock yourself out. I don't care. I don't care who you would like to sleep with or who you fall in love with. It's none of my business. But you can't tell me who I can sleep with, who I can fall in love with, what religion I got to practice. That's the thing. And you can't come into a country, or we shouldn't allow them, and I say them, I mean whether it's whether it's Islam or any other, right? That directly challenges the Constitution and the foundation of our legal system and what our norms are. We go back to the assimilation, and you don't go to another country and want them to change to you. And that is actually the mission of the migration of Islam. There are many, right? Middle East has 47 countries that are Muslim?
57.
57. So go live in any one of them. But that's not their mission. Their mission is by the Quran to spread Islam into every home. And that is the mission going on. And guys, I know people are rolling their eyes or listen. If you don't think that's true, you're not read up enough on this, on what's happening. That is, in fact, their mission and the goal.
Yeah.
And it will be to change somewhere down the line. They're going to have enough Muslims in Congress, in the Senate, and they're going to try to start to change the Constitution through amendments. It's going to happen. And we gotta rely on the resolute of the Constitution and hopefully the American people not to let that happen.
I think there's enough of us that can recognize what are fighting words. And I think there's still a segment of this country that once you start telling them what to do, and as you said, with Muslim organizations in New York telling non-Muslims, don't bring your dogs and walk them on the street. And all I can tell you is in my life, I should have known better when I met my second wife who hated dogs. And,
Is she Muslim?
No, she's not.
But she's Filipino.
No. That was wife number 2. This is number 3. She loves dogs. She has 2 of them back at her house in the Philippines, as well as 6 cats. No, she's definitely an animal lover. And as a matter of fact, she has me filming out in my place in West Virginia. I went out there one morning because there's a deer in the section that we call Brownsburg that somehow he lost an eye. I don't know if he got speared by something like an antler or whatever, but I call him Cyclops. And I'm actually out there feeding him in a feed bucket of corn. And it's not a very flattering video of me. I'm wearing boxer shorts that are plaid along with a heavy shirt, and it's freezing cold. But I'm out
That's
there.
a typical. That's a Southie uniform in the winter here. I mean, you know, you see guys in flip flops and shorts and going to Dunkies, right? Walking down the road in Southie to go to Dunks. It happens. All right, we're against the clock, Tom. Thank you for the call. I gotta run. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, folks. We're coming up to the end of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. There were a couple things that I didn't get to. Unfortunately, that horrific, right? The Frontier Airlines jet, a person killed on the Denver runway. That's such a thing to see, right? Remember, we just had the, I think it was Jersey, right? It was in New Jersey, Newark, I think, that the, was it Delta? The tires, the plane hit the top of that trucker. What is going on? But frightening aviation security story, right? Denver International Airport, person was struck, killed by the Frontier Airlines plane during takeoff. This was Friday night. Person reportedly jumped it's not the plane's fault. The person jumped the perimeter fence, entered a secure area in the airfield, and was hit within minutes of doing that. A lesson here: stay off an active runway. You know how powerful those things are. What's wrong with you? All right, folks, that's wraps up the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Don't forget, you can follow me on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. This show is turned into a podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Take your mom out. Remember your mom if she's not with us anymore. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, folks. Thank you. Joe out.
Headline news, weather, and local information. 8:30.